Right. Because this is not a, this is a special meeting.
Guess I'm on. All right, if you could join us for our pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, roll call.
Note for the record that all council members are present.
Okay. Typically we have oral communications, but this is a special meeting. But I know I have a couple of slips here, so maybe kind of open it up.
Yeah.
Why don't we just approve an agenda with an amended oral communication?
Yes.
Okay.
So somebody make that motion?
Is that a motion?
Yeah.
Item 4.
Right.
Okay.
So
Second.
moved and it's been seconded. So.
Thank you, Ray. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so oral communications. Michelle, an item on tonight's agenda that you'd like to talk about, or that's not on tonight's agenda?
I actually have a laundry list. Michelle Salmon, Brisbane resident. I've tried over the last couple of months to watch the council meetings, and they are absurdly long. I think that you're not doing your best work when you sit through a 4.5-hour meeting. I am certainly not doing my best work as a citizen trying to follow a 4.5-hour meeting. So I don't know what you need to do to bring the agenda down to a reasonable 3-hour meeting so that people can participate and that you can all do your best fresh and thoughtfully. But it's just not acceptable. I've sat there and watched it on TV until tears streamed down my face because there is so much extra commentary and so much extra discussion instead of just sticking to the facts. And so then I try to catch up online on the website to see the things that I slept through or missed, because I do have to get up at 6:30 and 6 in the morning to go to work every day. And although we have this guise of visibility, it's not visible. Like tonight, I went to go catch up and review some details from the last meeting that happened like at midnight. And there was a 2-hour and 17-minute tape that ended at a break, and that was it. The meeting before, there was no tape. And the abbreviated minutes are not adequate to be able to figure out what the heck happened at the meeting. And so you're kind of betwixt and between, because if I didn't have time to sit through the meeting, I don't have time to sit through the entire tape. I want to be able to go back and look at the high points on the web, which is what we're supposed to be able to do. Or if it was in full readable form, then I could scan it that way. And so the facts just aren't there. And one of the things that bothered me that I went back to check on was this Citizens Committee for the Baylands that's not made up of citizens, but rather former employees of the city. And I kind of resented that, because these same former employees are the ones who brought you the Northeast Ridge and all the construction defects and the mess that's up there. They were the people who were supposed to be responsible for the oversight of the development of the Northeast Ridge. And that's why I wanted to go back and double check who you were suggesting for this Citizens Committee. And so that kind of made me upset.
I guess I'm not sure what you're referring to.
Citizens Committee for the Baylands?
Finish, Ray.
No, I just want to know what she means by that. Yeah.
Well, did you have a thing on the agenda about having a citizens committee? I mean, I was pretty sleepy. I was like,
Yes.
Yeah.
okay.
We did.
We did. We did. We did.
And did you recommend former employees for that?
You know, how about, why don't you get
Okay.
through yourself and then we'll...
Yeah.
Okay,
No.
I
great.
think I know what you're
Well, I
talking
about
couldn't
it.
confirm my facts because the tape wasn't up on
Yeah,
the
no, for
website.
sure. And
Okay. And
We'll do it.
so it's just kind of upsetting. And, you know, through good times and hard times, I'm kind of been shocked at the budget process as well. I sat through the meeting where you first decided on the must-haves and the priorities and the this and that and the other thing. But, you know, frankly, as I sat there through every must-have and must-have with no, you know, and looking at the figures, and I was kind of shocked that we weren't delving down into those numbers and saying, what are we really doing? Because we have an overbloated budget that we can't afford. It's contingent on certain deals with properties being made, like Recology, and, you know, the must-haves, but at what price? I mean, it puts us in a position where we're actually contemplating flying out of the country to negotiate with a person from UPC who cannot obtain a visa to the United States without being extradited. What does that say about the position that Brisbane is in, because we have this gigantic budget that we have to meet? So I think we need to buckle up and start looking at a real budget that we can afford. And I think that we've avoided the 800-pound gorilla in the room for long enough, and that is compensation and salaries, which are extremely high for a city of 4,000 people. And I just hate to say that because, you know, good times were great and let's all, you know, have great compensation packages. But the reality is, you know, when I look at it, it seems like, you know, our top staff make more than the governor of California. And I just don't think that that is sustainable for the city of Brisbane. And it puts us in a position where we're willing to compromise things that we shouldn't be compromising. And I have a problem with that. I really, really do. And so I think it's time that we address a real budget and real cuts and not just taking away the afternoon bus or closing the pool in the wintertime or some of the other things that people have gotten used to and were promised, but where the real bulk of the money sits in our budget. And I had an interesting experience. Ray had called me to ask if I had the video from the casino project, and I did. And it was 10 minutes of very, you know, kind of entertaining stuff with a lot of historical, you know, people saying, oh, if we built the casino out at the marina, we'd have lots of money and all this. And it didn't happen. But in that vault of old DVDs that I had never watched was an interview that Ray Miller did with 3 of our 5 founding council members. And I watched it for the first time, hour and a half, with Ernie Conway, Jess Salmon, and Red Williams. And those men, those council people, took such fiscal responsibility for this city. And they have set a tradition that I think all of you need to honor about watching out for our future and not having overbloated salaries and not having being put in a compromised position. And I think that has a lot to do with the situations we find ourselves in, because we've gotten used to being a very wealthy city per capita, but we're not anymore. And I don't see in the future where that's going to change, even if Recology does come on board, and even if we do get an economic development director and score Google in our backyard or whatever. You know, there is no status quo, and we're not going back to normal. So we need to face the future a little bit more bravely than the must-haves, the mediums, and well, we're going to put that by the wayside. So that's what I have to say, and I'll stay as long as I can tonight, but you know what? I have to get up at 6 tomorrow morning, and I think that some of you do too. So I really would also like to see us have more reasonable agendas that the people of Brisbane can at least watch. A lot of people do watch from home. I know the audience has been quite empty, and I've not been here either, but I have been paying attention. So thank you very much for your time.
All right, thank you.
Do you want to respond about the Citizens Committee, or because I'm ready to?
Yeah, well, why don't you go, Rick? Because
Okay.
that's kind of like your thing.
Yeah, okay. And I'm sure that Terry will want to add to this because she was an important part of the conversation for that item.
So would I.
Yeah, okay. So, no, we do not have a Citizens Committee on the Baylands. What we proposed was a Citizens Committee to help us comment on the draft environmental impact report for the Baylands. That's quite different. It's not a matter of the project, or what's good or bad. It's, does the draft environmental impact report cover everything that it should in order to give us the information we need to deal with whatever environmental consequences will likely occur from the different alternatives. And so the Citizens Committee idea was to take advantage of people who have expertise or a great interest in, spending some real time reading, substantial parts of what's going to be a fairly technical document. So that was the idea, and it is true that I mentioned that we have a couple of former employees, and I did mention Carol Nelson, that I thought would be, great on a committee like that, if she's willing. But then Terry made the point, and I think then we all agreed, that it should be open to, anybody who's interested in wanting to serve on that committee, and that was what we passed, that everybody will send in suggestions, and we'll make it a public announcement, and, and anybody who wants to participate in that is free to do so. But it's not on the Baylands per se, it's on the draft environmental impact report for the Baylands.
Anybody else want to?
Clark wanted to say something, and so did Terry.
Well,
I think you covered it. It was pretty good.
Yeah. That covered that, but I was...
There's definitely...
Well, I just wanted to deal with that issue.
Other items.
Yeah, right.
You know what, if you want to touch base on some of those things that were raised.
Well,
Did Terry want to talk about that item some more? Did I reflect accurately?
I think you did a very good job of reflecting what was the final outcome of that suggestion. The initial suggestion was for it to be an elite group of people that were asked to participate. And I think that because of our discussion, we were able to make sure that it would be available to common citizens. And I think that was a good change. I think it was very difficult to really figure out what we were trying to accomplish at the first part of the suggestion that came from staff. And so I think it's good that you made a clarification on that. And again, because it happened at 11:30 at night, I think there's a lot of people who don't know what happened and couldn't digest it properly. And it's not on tape, so, or public tape right at the moment. So I think that your synopsis is very good. Thank you.
Okay. So, Clark, you wanted to...
just a couple things on the meeting that stopped at 2 hours and 17 minutes. Can we find out what happened on if that's recovered?
Yeah, there were 2 DVDs from that meeting, and we're redoing our website so we can put up part 1 and part 2 on a long meeting, and so I apologize for not having that up. The rest of them are there, except the one before, which there was a technical difficulty in uploading.
Okay.
It's complicated,
But it is...
but we have been putting videos up, and I just would want to, I know you were trying to do it tonight, but please feel free to call me, because I do have the DVDs, and I can tell you what happened, at least for the moment, or give you a copy of it so you can look it up. And
It should be available forever.
And that's our intention, and it usually is, so I apologize.
the compensation salary, this is something that we're going to be having a discussion. It's going to be ongoing for, I think, a long period of time. It's not just going to be made up when we pass the budget, and we talked about that. One thing I do want to address is your comment about going up to Canada and negotiating with UPC. I want to make real clear what this is not a negotiation. This is something that I had initiated at UPC to tell them that you guys are not looked upon favorably in the community, that the community thinks that you don't care about Brisbane, and what's important to Brisbane's future, our financial future, is this project with Recology, which they're going to require 20 acres of UPC's property. And UPC has done nothing. There's been meetings that have been going on for years, and they've done nothing to help move that along. And so I wanted to deliver this message to UPC representatives, Jonathan Scharfman and Willie Brown, which Cliff and I did as the Economic Development Subcommittee, and say, you guys are not the decision makers. How is this decision going to be made, and how are you going to deliver this message? And they shot back, well, why don't you deliver it yourself? They said, we're not going to China. They said, well, they're going to be here in Vancouver, Canada. Okay? And that's the whole purpose of this, is to see if they can get to the table with Recology to negotiate that property price, because if that property sale doesn't go through, see, our power was taken away when the governor and his infinite wisdom, and by the way, our city manager does a hell of a lot better job than our governor does. And so he does deserve more money than our governor does. So I'm going to stick up for him on that. So, but when they took away our RDA powers, we no longer have the eminent domain powers, which we had previously and could have done something about it. But
We did.
no, that was just to tell you that was in the works. But it's not, an easy thing to do. So, so this whole thing was to have this conversation to say, are you serious about moving this forward? Are you serious about the city of Brisbane? You know what I mean? So, because Recology, we are going to rely on that. And if that 20 acres purchase doesn't happen, well, they may end up going away. That was what our whole election process was predicated upon, that. And so there's no negotiation going on at all. Two people cannot negotiate.
What are they going to ask for in return, Mark?
Can I? May I?
Mark's just giving you,
I'm just
you
telling
asked
you
some
what,
questions.
Michelle,
and
you asked a
Clark's
question, I'm
giving some
telling you
feedback, so.
that's kind of how it went down, and that was the whole purpose of that. There's no negotiations going on whatsoever. We're not authorized to negotiate with anybody. That happens with, that's something that's totally separate between UPC and Recology, but we're in the middle of it. Our financial future's in the middle of it. Okay, so that's where that's at.
Seven?
Yes. I appreciate your comments. We are at a point that we're looking at cutting budget, cutting salaries, cutting programs. We're looking at all of that. And I know the same council members have been very mindful about not having a lot of travel and conferences. And right in the middle of this, we're sitting and talking about going to Canada to meet this chairperson that has been irresponsive in the past 40, 50, 80, 100 years. You think by your trip to Canada, you're going to be able to change this person's mind? I doubt it. Not on city's money.
I think
That's
that we
the
should
thing.
cut
Secondly-
travel budget 100% for
Fine.
city council members,
Fine.
and the city council members pay for their own way to go anywhere.
Fine. That's
You know what? Hey, you know what? Look.
We're talking about-
Look, I let you guys, respond to the citizens' comment. Just let me finish, right? And that isn't what we normally do. But we're, this is Brisbane, and we kind of do things in a different way. But we'll have that discussion later. Okay, not right now.
Mr. Mayor?
Oh, I know you want to talk about this. Wait until.
Just can't leave this unchecked. Seppi, you are the only one who's spent money on travel in the last 10 years or whatever. I've never spent a dime on travel going out of town. You spent the whole budget. All those years you've been on the council.
Okay, you know what? Let's stop
That
it right
needs to
now.
end.
Let's stop it right now. Okay. Now,
Okay.
I'm going to address just a couple more of your things. Now, length of meetings. Again, this is something that we're doing to provide feedback to the community, because you've come down here and expressed these things. And I've been on the council now. This is my third year. The first couple of years, we didn't have this type of dialogue. We have a more engaging dialogue, and that engaging dialogue takes time. And there are a lot of things that are on our agenda. Either we deal with them in one evening, or we deal with them in a couple of evenings. It's gonna eventually you got to get to it. Now, I could just say, okay, thank you, Michelle, for your comments. It'll be part of the record, and then move on to
Nancy, because she's the next person. But I didn't want to do that. You know, and I also wanted to let the council members have an opportunity to express, you know, how they felt to some of those questions. So, you know, we brought up the thing about UPC, and I'm on board with what, you know, Clark's position. You know, recology is, if we don't get recology, we're going to be in some serious hurt. And we haven't had that exchange of dialogue with the main guy. We're dealing with all these surrogates, and you know what? They can say whatever they want, the Jonathan Sharfmans, the Willie Browns, and you know what? They don't make the decisions. And they speak to the man. And so we need to have that conversation, and it's, you know, the amount of cost that it would take to fly up to Vancouver and fly back down all in the same day is pennies compared to what the millions of dollars that we would lose if we don't get this thing going. So, but you know, this is something that has been brought up at the end of our last council meeting. I can definitely see that it's a bit of a sore spot for a council member, and we're going to have that discussion in regards to, you know, is this something that we do, or is this something that we should not do, but not right now.
Please be aware that I'm not being penny-wise and pound-foolish about this. It's not the airfare to Canada.
Yeah.
It's going to be asked for in return.
Well, you know what? You know, like Clark just said, there's no negotiations. It's just, you know, being able to say, this is what we want, and this is what, you know, in having a face-to-face. So,
He's going to say what he wants.
That's exactly.
Okay. So, I think we talked over those points, and we're dealing with priorities as part of our discussion for tonight. Nancy.
That's somebody else.
So, Nancy, something on tonight's agenda. I mean, something that's not on tonight's agenda.
What is the park and rec budget?
Oh, okay.
Can I comment on it? The bus.
Well, you know, if you want to make the comment now, and we'll just take that information.
Okay, Honorable Mayor and council members, thank you. My name is Nancy Laxmana, and along with my husband Lori, live on Humboldt Road, and I have a 14-year-old son going to Terra Nova and Pacifica as a freshman in the fall. I know, Clark, that doesn't seem almost possible, that 9 years of school here, he's now moving on to high school. We want to thank you and the Chamber of Commerce for the past year supporting the school bus as part of the Rec and Park budget. We fully understand that this is not a normal responsibility of the city budget. We understand these are very difficult times, and jobs and other city services are definitely on the line. We know you will have to prepare to make difficult decisions after careful studying. However, the bus is critical for over 60 families on an every school day schedule. High school is a huge part of a student's maturity and development. Safety in getting transported to and from should not be. The charter high school option that you may hear about will not benefit the students that have just graduated 8th grade, for if it does become a local high school reality, we have been told it will only benefit one class a year starting in 2013. 8th graders had to make their high school choice in January, and the school district has told us they will not allow changes in the first semester, so school changes cannot be made. I would like to address one consideration of the bus fee, and that is if the proposed amount is increased dramatically. Please consider if the fee becomes too high, you may lose people to carpools, and then you don't have a full bus. We want to pay our fair share. It would take us 2 trips in the morning, taking the child there and, of course, returning, and 2 trips in the evening for at least 2 hours a day to get students to and from school. But not to have a full bus is also a concern if the price becomes too exorbitant. I know of at least 2 families that have 2 high school siblings, so if a sliding scale is offered, that would also help. So we are urging you to please make a decision on the bus so we can plan accordingly and hopefully get the CYO contract renewed for the fall. I personally am willing to donate hours here in the summer to answer phones, log names, stuff envelopes, anything to help offset the office help that you have to have in order to get the bus organized. Just let me know. I also think we could use more high school students in the city offices during the summer or in rec programs. Many schools require community service to graduate, and I think more listings of those opportunities as specific tasks would encourage more young adult involvement going forward. And then that's on the bus, and I just wanted to also acknowledge, I also am proud volunteer at the dog park. I just encourage you all to go visit the dog park. 2 weeks ago, there was a volunteer effort there. Over 25 people worked. Ted Reiterman, Wendy Fisk, the founders, the dog father, huge work involved, and they did a great job. So I want to acknowledge them, as well as Tim Chang, Humboldt Tree Service, for donating his services, and Madhouse Coffee. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Nancy.
Thank you, Nancy.
Carolyn?
Can we just, Clay, on the bus, we can address that?
Okay. Sure.
Yeah. The, where did we put that last year? It wasn't under Park and Recs, was it? Or was it?
Yeah.
It was Parks and Rec. So we didn't, where
It's
we
part of the Parks and Recreation. It's a contribution. It's under contributions.
Okay. And this year?
It's still in Parks, and it would be part of Parks and Recreation. It's under the council discussion list.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. All right, Carolyn.
Hi, I'm Carolyn Parker. I live at the Ridge. I wanted to talk about the Citizens Committee. I have some questions about it that I wanted to bring up. One, I wanted to know if the committee is going to be consensus-driven. I think it would probably be preferable if the committee, if each person has a say rather than a consensus. I think that would be just much more valuable for the Planning Commission and their work, and also for the council, I would think. And I would say that also, I'd like to see people who are on CREEBL and also BBCAG. These are people who have specific idea. On the BBCAG, they're looking at it from one viewpoint. On CREEBL, they're looking at it from another viewpoint. If these people who are on these committees, I would think that they should be welcome to the Citizens Committee. Also, I would like to see that the Citizens Committee is not bound by the Brown Act. I think that this is a committee of citizens, so I think that they should be able to feel free to talk to anybody on the council and anyone on the Planning Commission, because, the more help everybody gets, the better. And I think that's the only things I have to say, because on one hand, having a committee like this could be beneficial, but if the committee is bound to some kind of consensus, then it would probably be better just to have people come and speak directly to the committee or the council, because I think, that there's a lot of interest. People come and they talk. There's a lot of interest that's generated. Also, one thing I'd like to say is that at various points, I know we're supposed to go through the whole EIR in 120 days, but at some point, I would also like to encourage people to, if they need to come and go, this is going to be summer, spring, that they do not have to be, we don't start out with one committee and we end up with another committee, that maybe this is a citizens committee that could come in and out. So I think that would also be a beneficial thing for the committee. And I can't think of anything else, but if I do, I'll send an email to the council. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Caroline. Do you want to?
I just, those are all good thoughts. But I recall, checked with the city manager, because this issue of the Brown Act, that came up last time. And I think Hal said something, or maybe you said, Clay, that because this is not a committee that's making recommendations per se, it is individualized, at least that's my understanding of it. And so therefore it would not be subject to the Brown Act. Am I right about that?
I believe it wouldn't, but probably for different reasons, because it's an ad hoc committee.
Yeah,
and it's not a standing committee.
right,
So it would be shorter duration in time.
It's less than 6 months.
And it's less than 6 months.
right. Yeah.
So I
So
don't-
for a variety of reasons, I don't think it's subject to the, as I understand from staff, it's not subject to the Brown Act.
I mean,
So
we'll have the city attorney.
We'll have the
bless
city
that.
attorney, make sure when we put all this together more formally, but it was my initial understanding that what you were talking about, what was the intent, and that's legally okay.
Okay.
I have a question for staff on that. If it's ad hoc and expected to be less than 120 days, because that is the time frame we've recommended for the EIR comments, if it goes longer, does that put us in a conflicting position?
6 months is,
Well, 6 months is the period of time.
and it hasn't, is a topic that has an ending, it's not ongoing.
Yeah.
That's the difference.
I mean, I think if you're kind of asking the question is, would we run into some jeopardy if for some reason it went on for a year or something like that? And I think at some point what you would have to do is say, okay, the committee's going to go beyond the 6 months, so we're going to now have to start posting it as a Brown Act eligible committee. But I don't anticipate that happening because I don't think the 120-day mark is going to change. The only thing I could possibly see is if the council thought the group would be good to keep together for other purposes as the process moves forward. And if that is the case, then we'll have to examine the Brown Act implications of that.
Okay, I would really like the city attorney to weigh in on the whole scenario.
Yeah, he
Thank
weighs
you.
in on all these, but he's the final authority.
Okay, thank you.
Safi, do you have anything? You're good? Okay. So let's move on to the budget workshop. Okay, Parks and Recreation budget review.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm going to start this meeting like I started the last meeting with an update as to where we are in the budget. We have currently items that have kept in the budget based on the last couple of meetings is $222,200, and items that are still under consideration are $233,000. So
It's
they're
not coming up on our screens.
Stand by for technical difficulties.
Yeah, okay. So the net deficit at the current time is $967,088. There's been about $112,000 that have been removed from the budget to date. So, I think one of the questions at some point is, what is that dollar amount that we're trying to reach for that net deficit? It's below the $1 million that we had started with. But, is council looking for 950,000? Are they looking for 900? Are they looking to bring it fully in balance? I think that would be a topic of conversation maybe later in the meeting. Now I'm going to move on to Parks and Recreation. Sorry. Parks and Recreation budget. This is the same format that you've seen previously. The Parks and Recreation Department has expenditures of about $1.3 million, takes in revenues of $307,000, has a net cost of $1,031,000. It's shown broken out as to the different areas. If, as you know, the pool is not located in this budget, it's part of the Marinas and Aquatics budget, and you've already reviewed that. Administration doesn't, really recoup any money. That's the amount of money that we're trying to recover in our administrative fee that we charge. Facility maintenance, that's what we recover in the Mission Blue area. Youth activities, number of programs that we don't recover very much from are sports programs and activities like that. Adult activities, we do a little bit better at. Senior activities, the council has previously made the determination that we would not recover any funds there. Special events, the recovery is mostly for the concerts in the park, and teen activities is another area where council has previously said that we are not trying to do full cost recovery, or, as you can tell, any real cost recovery. Again, as in with most budgets, the larger expenditures are in the salaries and benefits, since we are a department that provides services directly to people. We need people to do that. There are certain requirements for how many staff we have when we are running programs. And then just going through the individual divisions, as you would expect, administration is mostly salaries and benefits. We don't have any of our supervisors there, nor do we have any of department head there. But items that are under consideration under the administration are items such as the signboard materials. We spend $5,000 on the paper. For the signboard, we spend another amount of money for the staff time to print those signs. We have online registration. Staff would not recommend we reduce that because that would mean that we'd be having more people coming in person and we'd be spending more staff time on that area. Parks and Recreation Commission special events, they have $500 if they want to do something. Special merit awards, things like Volunteer of the Year would come out of there. And then travel and training, we have $2,580. I'm not sure if you want to take these division by division, or if you'd like to take it as a department, after the whole department is done, if you'd like to talk about these items.
You're going to go into this staff report, these graphs and these different items.
Caroline will after we're all done with the budget.
Okay. If you could just go through
Sure.
it, Stuart.
Moving on, facility maintenance. We do spend more money here for service and supplies because that's what we use. That's where we maintain our buildings with. Janitorial services. We have the telephone at Mission Blue. We have a payphone at Mission Blue that we need to pay for. This is what it costs us, as well as a telephone at the community center. And in the past, the council has voted to put a portable toilet at Fisherman's Park. And youth activities, again, it's very much the salaries and services, or salaries and benefits. A couple of items that are in here is that we provide the Brisbane Elementary School with $37,400 in a direct payment, and the Jefferson Union High School is $67,500, which is where we support the school bus out of. In the upcoming year, the rate for the school bus is going up. This is something that I brought back to you last September with the rates going up for gasoline and also for inflation. So next year, CYO is going to be charging the city $85,860. We get about $19,000 in revenues from the parents for the school bus. The school district is the one who actually sends out the letters to the parents. We write the letter, but they send out the letters to the parents because they're the ones who know which children are in the school, and they are also the ones who keep the information as to which ones receive free or reduced lunches, because there's discounts for people who are free and have reduced lunches.
I have a question. We started this about 3 years ago.
Yes.
What was the original cost? Was it about $30,000?
No, I think the cost was think it was like $50,000 for the city, and this year it would be about $67,000 from the city, depending on whether or not the Chamber of Commerce can, put their $10,000 donation in. So it's been an increase.
Oh, yeah.
That's
why the schools are not doing it.
Just as you predicted 3 years ago when we started this. Senior citizens, again, salaries and benefits are a large portion of this. We keep the Sunrise Room open. We don't collect any revenue for those kinds of programs. We provide $2,800 to the senior club directly for their senior trips, and we also do another $20,400 contribution to the senior club, and this is for mostly pays for their lunch meals and some of their, probably additional for a little bit of their senior trips as well, although a portion of their senior trips are paid for by the seniors who take the trips. Special events, the big one in here now is the concerts in the park, because as you will see on the next slide, most of the other items are for council discussion. So the day in the park at $21,000, Festival of Lights, Beautification Day, fire hydrant painting. We still do a little bit of this around town, and the Lagoon Cleanup Day. Teen activities, we keep the teen center open. We also provide teen dances. And as you see, we have books and publications, the disc jockey for the teen dances. This is for the middle school dances that we provide. Dance party and food supplies. I figure if we're not going to have the disc jockey, we probably don't need food for that. Special merit awards. This is for for the teens, for the YAC and areas like that. Travel and training, which is also for the Youth Advisory Council, and then new computers and game consoles for the teen center. For some reason or other, those things don't last very long when they're there.
I have a question. How many youth do we actually? Can you give us a number?
How many youth use the teen center on a daily basis?
Yeah.
Very few.
Like
less than a handful. A lot of the youth are using the library as a place to go. One of the challenges that we face with the teen center is that it seems to be a long walk for the teens from the middle school. When they leave the campus and they're walking, the teen center is not the first place that they will go to. They will go to the library, they'll go to Julie's, they'll go play basketball, they'll go to the skate park. I think we've created a lot of other activities for teens to do in this town over the years, that the teen center is not the central focus that it was about a decade ago when I first got here. And so it's a challenge as to, what to do with that. Again, here's as you've seen before, here's the budgeted costs, here's the net costs with the 10, 20, 30, 40% cuts. If we were to do a 10% cut, what we would look at is reducing the money for the senior trips, reducing the money for the high school bus, reducing special events, maybe not eliminating all of them, but reducing them, eliminating the toilet at Fisherman's Park, and reducing the teen center hours. As we go to a 20% cut, we would get rid of the senior subsidy, reduce the senior center hours, further reduce teen center hours, eliminate all special events other than concerts in the park, which is pretty much self-supporting, eliminate the signboard, eliminate phone service at our facilities. What we talked about in the department was that we really see providing after-school care for the children in the elementary school as a main purpose, as well as providing care for the preschool. Those are programs that really are needed to ensure that parents have an ability to feel comfortable when they're at work. So when we get to the 30% cut, we would eliminate administrative support. We'd eliminate the after-school sports programs. We'd begin to eliminate adult classes in sports. And then as we went to the 40% cut, we'd eliminate youth classes. We'd seek to have the senior center run by volunteers. And then the last one would be probably the hardest one for us to think about, is eliminating the spring-winter camps. Just trying to find ways to get to that point where we are, get to that 40% cut is not an easy number.
I have a question on the spring and winter camp.
Mm-hmm.
How much people pay for it, and what is the percentage of cost recovery on that?
It does a very good job in cost recovery. I mean, Caroline will be presenting that next, and I'm thinking it's in the 90,
No. 50.7.
50,
according to the last sheet.
okay,
This spring and winter camp.
okay. Summer camp does better,
Summer camp is in the positive range.
right?
Thank you.
Welcome. So that was that one, and then the next one I want to talk about before Caroline comes up and does her presentation is are the options that we looked at. So the subcommittee asked us to go talk with San Carlos, because San Carlos provides Parks and Recreation services not only for themselves but also for Half Moon Bay. So we asked San Carlos what they would be able to do for us. So they gave us this idea of what they would do. They would have the director of Parks and Recreation be shared. They would share two recreation supervisors with us. They would suggest we would have an administrative assistant as well as an office assistant, then a recreation coordinator, and then the head lifeguard for the pools, and then another recreation coordinator for the youth activities. Their proposed structure would cost about $439,000 was what they provided to us. Because we don't have a Parks and Recreation director and because we've already lost one of our supervisors, the cost for that same basic structure would be $226,000 is what we're paying right now. So we did receive that act. We did receive the proposal from San Carlos. I think it's very similar to what you heard with the police department, that, you know, based on what the positions we've already lost, we've already taken advantage of a lot of the savings that they can do for us. But if we would like to relook at how we provide the services and saying, instead of providing it with two supervisors, providing it with a supervisor and a rec coordinator, that could be something we could do to save just, you know, a little bit more money.
It seems like a wash, though. I mean, what we've already eliminated is
We've already eliminated, when you eliminated the department head, we've really eliminated.
what they would be proposed to do and be paid for.
Right. I mean, when you eliminate the department head, that was really the big savings for them. Because they would be able to share one department head between 3 different departments,
Right.
whereas we're having no department heads for our department, and it's become an ancillary part of my job.
Right.
So it would be difficult to find additional savings from going outside in that fashion.
That approach. Yeah.
In that approach.
Right.
So with that, I will turn it over to Caroline to talk about the Parks and Recreation cost study. This was requested by the City Council about a month and a half ago. We've been working very hard to get this completed. I think Caroline finished it up on Thursday. It has not been reviewed by the Parks and Recreation Commission yet. The anticipation that you would look at it tonight and probably then request the Parks and Recreation Commission to have a look. If we waited for the Parks and Recreation Commission to look at it, you wouldn't be seeing this until, my guess is sometime next year, because there's a lot of information here that Parks and Recreation Commission would probably take a long time in reviewing. But we wanted to let you see tonight the first blush of what it looks like.
Next fiscal year.
What?
Next fiscal year.
I was hoping next calendar year, but you're probably right. It would. I mean, because there's, as you could tell, there's a lot of information here, and there's a lot of ways to try and understand what is full cost recovery, as we talked about at the meeting back in April, I believe, and what kinds of recommendations the Park and Recreation Commission, I can see them taking this chunk by chunk. And I'll talk a little bit later when we talk about the fee study that the Parks and Recreation Commission looked at the Mission Blue fees, and they spent a couple of meetings going through that. And so that was one fee that they went through. Trying to do, 30 or 40 fees would take just that much longer to try and accomplish. But I'll turn it over to Caroline now.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Council members. As you can see, there's lots of charts and graphs, so I'll try to go through this as clearly as possible. So, first off, this is the second iteration that we have done this at the staff level in terms of a cost recovery study for the Parks and Recreation Department. The initial one was done in 2009. But as Stuart mentioned, at the request of City Council, this has been updated to reflect current programs and events and classes in the Parks and Rec Department. So staff takes a full cost approach to determining cost recovery levels, and that includes 4 different areas. You can think of them as direct program or variable costs, and those are most likely the part-time salaries that are needed to have that program, such as rec leaders, instructor payments for coaches for youth sports are included in direct program and variable costs. Fixed costs are costs that are still being expended with whether or not the program is going on or not. So those also are included: gas and electric for the facility, landscaping costs to keep the grounds as they are. Citywide distributed costs are administrative expenses. So indirect costs is the line item in the budget, and as well it includes liability insurance and workers' compensation where appropriate. Non-cash costs refer to depreciation of any building or field or equipment that is associated with that program. So to start off with, the cost recovery levels for the pool, you can see from this graph that if you only take into account the total variable costs, then the pool makes money. If you then add in the total fixed costs with the variable costs, then you see the recovery is only 63%. And with citywide distributed costs added in, it goes down to 44%. And when you add all of the costs, depreciation of the pool building, and the chemical room, the cost recovery is 37%. So I wanted to give an overview of the pool program, which is mostly adult lap and recreation swim. The pool was open in 2011 for 3,626 hours, and that figure is key because it determines the cost of the pool, which is a fixed cost, and to spread it out amongst the different seasons that the pool runs or is open for, that number was necessary. So then we looked at the activity guides and also spoke with the staff at the pool to see that the winter season at the pool, it's actually from October of the previous year to the end of March. So it's the longest season at the pool. Total is 21 weeks, and therefore it has the most number of hours it's open. And we can see the cost recovery is 16.1% when you take into account the lifeguards and the cost of the pool, which I mentioned, which was 1,197 hours multiplied by the total fixed citywide and non-cash cost.
Would you give it, why are there so many more hours in the winter? It seems counterintuitive.
Longer time span. 21 weeks.
I'm not quite sure.
It's because actually when the pool talks about the winter, they're not talking about the same winter that you and I would talk about. They start their winter hours in October and they end their winter hours in March. So they're not really, it's not strictly
So the time periods are not comparable?
Right. And the reason is because they start, they recognize that during what they would call the winter, it's open just briefly in the morning for lap swimming, it's open briefly in the afternoon or at lunchtime for lap swimming, and it's open in the evening for a lap and just a little bit of recreational swimming. And they call that winter. It's when it becomes just basically a lap pool for the city. Because then in the winter hours for the weekends, it's open from 10:30 to 1, I think, in the afternoon. So, I mean, it's a very brief period of time that it's open, and they call winter that period of time. They don't call it what I would, which would be December through March. They call it October through March because they already know that their use of the recreational swim is way down in October.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Yeah, I think it's Group 5. Thank you, Stuart. He's an avid swimmer, so he would know more about this whole
The
season.
only suggestion I have for further communication to others is that from this particular page, that time period discrepancy is not obvious at all. And it might be useful to, when you say winter up here, to say, you know, how many months or weeks that entails, and then...
That makes sense. So when we bring it to the Parks and Recreation Commission, we'll bring it with winter and show what the
the days that, what month it's open from and what month it's to.
Right.
That makes a lot of sense.
That'd be helpful, because that was a question that I had too. So
That's now the third time I've heard that question.
No, I didn't.
Actually, she said it.
No, she did say it. So I didn't
Yeah, right, but I said, what?
But Ray's right, it should be on here.
Right, no, and that makes sense.
Yeah, Lynn Stewart oftentimes made that point that the winter time is the most cost recovered at the pool. It's without the cost of the pool row added in. It does recover the most cost if you don't take into account that $103,000. But moving forward, for spring, slightly higher at 18%. Summer has the least amount of weeks in the season, 9 weeks total. So it has a higher cost recovery at 35.9, and the fall has 10 weeks, so a cost recovery of 30.7. I'll point out the cashiers are only working during the summer months.
Can you give how many weeks or months between visits?
Sure. So the winter season is 21 weeks. Do you want me to say the month?
Yeah, the weeks is fine.
Okay. The spring season is 12 weeks. The summer season is 9 weeks. And fall is 10 weeks. So they do add up to 52. Right now.
You hope.
So,
It-
may I?
Sure.
So October to March is winter.
Right. October 31st to March 27th in 2011 was winter.
And spring goes from April to...
March 28th to June 19th.
Summer,
June 20th to August 21st.
okay.
And fall is August 22nd to October 30th.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. So, if no other questions, I'll move ahead to special events. So, as you can see that there's revenue or credits accounted for the events that have sponsor donations, such as Day in the Park. And in 2013, that was $2,300 about was the amount of revenue. Program-specific costs are listed, as well as the staff, and so the cost recovery was 6.5%. Giants ticket sales, which is Community Day at the Park, it would be 98.9% cost recovery if you do not include the staff row, because this is supposed to be a pretty much break-even event that the city does each year. But with the staff added, it's about 95% cost recovered. The Volunteer of the Year, this cost center replaced the Star Awards, and so just looking at what was spent in 2011, there was no cost recovery. Obviously, there's no donations for that. Lagoon cleanup was similar in that there's just expenses, mostly just the supplies for the day, including the t-shirts, the porta potty rental, and the staff. Habitat Restoration Day, similar as Lagoon cleanup with zero cost recovery, and Festival of Lights. You can see the program costs and the staff costs. Concerts in the Park, Stuart mentioned, it is supposed to be a break-even event as well. If staff was not included in that, it would be 105% cost recovered. But just so that you see the full cost, it's about 94.6%. The Brisbane Derby, we do have donations for that, and so that helps offset the cost, so 38.6% recovered. And lastly, we added city signboards in here, as most of the events are announced through this means. So the cost of paper and the staff is listed there. Any questions about events?
Yeah, one. If, Carolyn, if we didn't do the signboard, we'd still have a staff, right? And that would have to be displaced somewhere else? Is that?
That's correct. This is a fixed cost, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah, I have a similar question with the Brisbane Derby. So if we
Right.
didn't do that, there, the rec supervisors amount would be applied to some other thing that we do in the.
It would become, I mean, it would be one of those things, depending on what we stop doing, there may become a point in time where we could do everything with one rec supervisor. This is the challenge that we had discussed when we were talking about how do we actually determine costs. What kind of cost recovery are we talking about? Are we talking about full cost recovery? Are we talking about only trying to cover the variable cost? Or are we trying to cover portions of the fixed costs? Because, when you look at the citywide distributed costs, if you get rid of any single program, we're still going to have the same number of people in payroll, the same number of everything else. So it's a hard question to try and say how you're going to use this information to set rates. If you're looking to, you may want to decide that you want to cover all of your variable costs and a portion of your supervisorial cost. That may be and this might be conversations I think the Parks and Recreation Commission could have and probably should have to try and really figure out what does cost recovery mean when you're talking about programs like these. And then the other question, of course, is how much are these become important or valuable programs for the community? And what's the benefit that the community derives from having some of these kinds of programs? And and it's just a difficult question. And then if you charge too much, do you stop having people show up?
Sure.
As we heard earlier with the cost of the bus. So yeah.
Yeah, I know we were talking about do you have a gross cost recovery or do you have a net cost recovery? And Clark, you were bringing that up. I'm just looking at the Brisbane Derby. The credits or whatever. I mean, that's $3,737, but we get revenue that's $3,800. So you can see that is a service that is being covered. So why wouldn't you do it? But as Stuart says, if you add up all those things,
Full cost.
do you need? You have your staff. Do you need to have the two people, or can you do it with just one? Yeah, but if you keep all those things, then of course you need the two supervisors. All right.
Okay.
Well, just another dimension to that complicated set of relationships that go beyond what we are looking at here. If you take Habitat Restoration Day, I mean, they are helping with the vegetation management program, some of which we would be paying money for otherwise if it weren't done on Habitat Restoration Day. So in a sense, there is kind of a cost recovery that isn't reflected here.
Absolutely. If we would assume that we would do any habitat restoration.
Yeah.
Right. Yes.
So, yeah. But we'll get to those priority things later.
No, but I mean, that's what makes it complicated. And trying to figure out, the relative costs and benefits. And the benefits are, more difficult to identify than some of the costs are.
Right. I think this is like one of those issues where you just say that we look at costs and benefits from an economic, strictly economic perspective. We're not really looking at it as a Great. This is where not having my full faculties. Not looking at it from the opportunity costs, because one of the questions could be is if we don't do a certain program, could we do a program that has a higher cost recovery, or do we do a program, as you said, with habitat restoration that would cost us someplace else? So we're not really looking at our opportunity costs when we do this kind of economic analysis.
And Stuart, I want to ask a question. Getting back to that Brisbane Derby, the $6,000 for staff. How did you come up with that number?
It's the amount of staff time that it takes us to prepare for that.
So that, okay, so that is a real number.
That is a real number. It's the number of hours that Russ has to put in to work with the Derby people, the amount of time it takes us to sell to sell everything, to set up the flights and all that, as well as time that it takes for staff to be there on that day.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Okay. So moving on to the Teen Center. The Teen Center was open for just over 1,400 hours in 2011. It's open for a longer period during the week when school is not in session, so 36 hours for 14 weeks during the summer versus 26 hours a week during the school year. And because this is a breakdown of the total costs, and it does take in revenue for teen dances, just over $1,600 in revenue, and the cost recovery is not very high due to the total variable, fixed, and citywide costs amounting to $87,000.
And we have questions on that?
So how are we proceeding? Are we making comments on various things? Are we waiting to the end, or what do you want to do?
No, I think we should make comments on a particular section that Caroline covers, and we make those comments, and then I think we should come back later and have a more full discussion on the whole thing.
Or is it appropriate for me to?
Yeah, no, ask a question about.
Well, it's not a question. It's a
comment.
It's an observation.
Okay.
Based on what Stuart said and the limited usage, that it seems to me that under current circumstances, the teen center is not functioning very well, and we're putting a lot of money into something that isn't doing the job. So it would seem to me that, I'm not opposed to appropriate services for teens, but this doesn't seem to be working, so we're putting a lot of money into something that's not working. Maybe we should take that money away and then have a year in which we figure out, okay, so what can we do to make a program for teens that's actually going to work? That's my observation anyway. If we're only having a handful, that's a lot of money. It's $87,000, and it's not working. So, and we got budget problems, and why should we be throwing money down the drain? In effect, I know that some of the members of the Park and Recreation Commission have had the same concern, and they really want to set up a subcommittee and work on this and see if we can make some progress in revamping the program.
I know in the
meantime, why should we continue something that isn't working?
I know in the past we've had Youth Advisory Council, and I don't know if that's still going on.
I'm going to look at Steve, but my answer in the year that I've been in charge of Parks and Rec, very minimally. There are not very many teens who are very interested in that at this point. They have a lot of other opportunities to do stuff. The challenge is that the teens have changed in the last decade. And I know this from having two teenage boys, is that it used to be that teenagers did not have the same opportunities to interact with their friends through gaming consoles at their house. That you had to be someplace to be with your friends. In the last 10 years, my kids are on Xbox and on their computer in their house, and they are with their friends.
And their smartphone.
And their smartphone, absolutely. And Facebook, and so the interaction that teens have now is very different from what it was. We had for this year's Youth and Government Day, we had people from Littman. The kids from Littman came in, and this is actually what we talked about with them. Because one of the things that we try and do with our youth and government is try and present them with a problem, because that's what we do. We solve problems in government. And the problem we talked about was the teen center. And so one of the teens told me that he never shows up to it. And then I find out from one of the teachers, oh no, he was just there the other day playing pool. So whether or not they tell me the truth is another interesting aspect of this whole thing. But they say that, being in the teen center is really not what they need to do anymore. They go down to the basketball courts, they play basketball, they have after-school sports programs that we put on. They are in the library. They like the library because it's right close to Julie's. They all like to hang out in Julie's after school. We asked, would it make sense to have the teen center up in Lippman, similar to how we have the portable over at the elementary school? And they said no, they would rather not have it up at Lippman because, when they're done with school, they want to get away from that atmosphere. Although I had a parent come in recently and talk to me about potentially increasing the length of time that the after-school homework center is open. And so I've talked to the superintendent there, and I need to talk to the principal about potentially having us have one of our senior rec leaders be up at the school to help to keep their homework center open an hour longer, and then close and not have that person at the teen center, have the teen center closed. So we are still trying to figure this out, and taking some time to truly understanding what the problem is that we're trying to solve. I mean, this is not, we are not Daly City, where people are, the teens are hanging out places that are making people feel uncomfortable. We're not Foster City, where you have a city of 40,000 people. We're a city of 4,000. We have a handful of teens in town, and really trying to figure out how do you motivate them to do different activities. We've we put up at the teen center the last few years. What summer trips do you want to go on? And no teens ever tell us what they want to do. We've tried to do that in their school, and they don't really give us an idea. I mean, it's just because it's the age.
Kind of funny. I actually, that was one of the things when I first ran for council, because many years I didn't have a teen center. It was, but given the statistics, I have a tendency to agree with Ray. I mean, at least for this next year, I'd like to see a reaction from the teens as they know that maybe this is going to close. Sometimes you don't get a reaction until there's like, hey, this could go away this year, and maybe the Youth Advisory Council can come up with some ideas, because, I mean, if we did close it for the year, they would still like to see some type of program like the dances go on. Not sure it needs to necessarily be in that building or not.
Well, the dances we do up at the Lippman gym, so that would be where we would do them.
Okay.
Mission Blue.
Stuart,
Oh, that's different than when I was...
what are the hours of the teen center?
I'm going to let Steve answer that. That's why he's here.
3 to 7 during the school year, Monday through Friday, 1 to 6 during non-school.
Okay, so 1 to 6 every day. So we have 20 hours a week during the school year, and then...
26 hours.
Oh, sorry. 4? Wait, 3 to 7.
Actually, fewer now, because that's for 2011. We used to be open Saturdays, we're no longer open Saturdays.
Oh, okay. You said Monday through Friday?
It's just now Monday through Friday.
From 3 to 7?
Yeah.
So it's 4 hours?
On Wednesdays, because they get out of school at 2 on Wednesdays. So 3 to 7, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, 2 to 7, Wednesday.
It would probably be better if you were at a microphone.
Okay. Yeah, why don't you come on
I
now?
could be loud.
Yeah.
You could be loud, but the people at home would like to hear you on a microphone.
Okay, so it's 26 hours then during the week?
Yeah, 26.
Okay, and then during the school year, and then how many hours during the summer?
Right now, we're 1 to 6, Monday through Friday. School just got out last Thursday.
Okay, so it's 30 hours then.
And I think those hours are for including Saturdays for 2011. We just recently went Monday through Friday.
Monday through Friday, okay. And then, are you the person that is staffing or you're at the teen center?
That's one of the problems with the teen center is, since I've also taken over youth sports, which has been a few years ago, but also in our middle school sports league, they no longer allow us to host games in our gym because it's so small. and I had to, I was able to get free usage of middle school gym in Pacifica, part of the deal being I have to be there to supervise the gym when we have programs going on there. So both of these programs happen between 3 and 6 p.m. Monday through Friday. It's kind of hard for me to be both places at one time.
Oh, okay. All right. And then how many kids on average show up?
It's been real low, 50, but I mean like 5 a day, but I just last week did a special end of the year barbecue party and we got close to 50 kids. We had 40, 44, 45.
Okay, so on a regular attendance, it's about
it's like 5.
a handful. And then if you have a special event,
if I feed them, they come.
You feed them?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, and then how consistent has that been over the last several years?
I was looking past. I used to get probably a dozen to 20 a day in 2007, 2008, and it's been steadily going down. And there's been, we've frozen 2 coordinator positions there. When I first got hired here 10 years ago, I was the teen center coordinator, and then moved into other things. That position was frozen. About 4 years later, we created a 3/4 time teen coordinator position. That person moved on. That position was frozen. And it's just been hard to have a face of the center. So it's really probably when that last person, Greg, left in 2008, I believe he left, 2009. It's been hard to keep a person that all the kids can identify as the teen center person.
So would you say that is one of the main reasons for the decline? I mean, Stuart gave another reason that it's
a very hard age to program for. I mean, it's like pulling teeth. You can ask Nancy Loxamon sitting here. I was just talking to her. Teens are hard to. Seriously, unless I feed them, it's really hard to get them to.
With the other.
It is also true. We don't have the
population.
There's just so much things they could do at home. I mean, Brisbane is a unique community. It's so small that it's not I find it kind of funny that they do say it's a long walk from Julie's or wherever, but from school. But it's also it's kind of a town where people don't feel too bad about having their kids just walk around and not participate in anything. They can, parents are pretty comfortable with letting their kids just wander around and not being in a program. And a lot of times we get used as an alibi. Oh, I was down at the teen center. I haven't seen your son in 3 weeks, but.
So your fellow Park and Rec supervisors in other cities, like for example Pacifica, since you're there often, are they seeing the same type of decline of teenagers?
It's always cyclical, I think. It's really hard to compare. I mean, we're such a small town, it's hard to compare. I don't think Pacifica has a teen center per se. I think they have...
Way Beach.
They got the beach and Taco Bell. They have a skate park. Cities that do have, like the Foster City, San Carlos, they do have these big teen centers, but they're also attached to large community centers where it's more part of a whole citywide operation, and it's kind of a whole different feel than ours.
Sure, and I mean, there, like you mentioned, there's other things that the kids could do, basketball or.
Yeah, I will say that ever since we opened that basketball court, that is probably my biggest competition.
So
for as far as drawing kids in.
What are the draws of the teen center that you can't find anyplace else in town?
And that's where the challenge is. I mean, that's where the challenge is. It used to be that we used to have computers there, and we used to have TV and gaming console, and you could watch TV without your and you could play in games. But it's become so ubiquitous in people's homes. I mean, it's those kinds of things have become a lot less expensive over the years. So it's not like you have to be someplace, and then the library has their computers, and my understanding when you talk to the library staff is that the kids are are always using their computers on the after school. So there's very little unique that we could provide. We have pool table.
Pool table, ping pong, basketball.
Right.
The usual recreational facilities for a teen center. The big thing we can provide is, honestly, we get a lot of kids whose parents don't want them at home between 3 and 7. They're driving them crazy, so they come down to us. So we do provide that, probably as more as a benefit for parents than the kids.
They could go to the library.
They go to the library. And then there's always been, in the last 2 years, we've discussed, like, changing it up. Would it work better up at Lippman? Would it work better? There's also been the discussion of the library and the swap with the Eagles and all that. But that's, I'm sure, way off.
Way down the line.
Yeah.
Okay. Clark?
Steve, so it sounds like it's not much of a program. It's just items that are provided with no program. I mean, it's a building with pool tables, ping pong tables.
Yeah, it's a real funky space to try to do programming in. It's just real hard. There's just all these little rooms, and it's real. You can't really. It's not conducive to doing a whole lot of programming there. Like, everything I do is usually out at another place. Like, we do the dances at either the gym or Mission Blue, and anything we do there would have to be real small scale, just kind of.
But I mean, if you had a different space, would it be a program issue? Or, I mean,
It would probably be more, if we had a different space, it would be a lot more open to other programming ideas, a little more flexibility.
Mm-hmm. I mean, if they, because there's been talk about moving up to Lippman School, because high school kids generally are not really participating in the teen center. They're off onto other things now. But it's mostly the middle school kids, right?
Yeah, I'd say mostly 7th, 8th, 9th grade. A few 10th graders, once they start driving, they're not around in town too much.
So I guess my question is, if we shifted the teen center itself to the middle school, which there's been talk of doing that, I guess there would be an issue of bringing 9th and 10th graders on the campus, but would you be able to provide more programming without necessarily raising the cost to maybe get the kids more interested in doing some activities, maybe some more physical activities, like punch the pager or something?
I think so. I think you'd have a lot bigger captured audience. There's a lot of kids that are hanging around up there anyway. There's a lot of kids that are in their after-school program or their homework center program, and according to the school, they would love to expand it. They just have kids that, I guess, won't leave after an hour. They don't want to kick them out. They want to keep them there as long as they're studying.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the bulk of the program is for kind of that age, and I think the kids kind of have a misconception that if our program was up there, it'd be staffed by teachers. It wouldn't be staffed by teachers. It'd be staffed by Parks and Rec people. I just don't think they make that connection. And that's what they're afraid of. It'd be their teachers they'd be seeing all day.
Mm-hmm. So maybe, Ray, maybe that's something we ought to send to the Parks and Rec Commission to see what they can do to kind of develop that. What do you think, Stuart?
Yes, I mean, I think there's a member of the Parks and Recreation Commission who would love to take this on. Mm-hmm. As I said, I think as we're going through this, the real question is, what is the issue that we're trying to solve in this town? Are we having a problem of teens not having enough to do after school? Are we having problems, in some cities, teens hang out in the mall, and that's not really where the retailers would like them to be. So you try and offer them other alternatives. Do we have some cities provide the midnight basketball because the teens have issues about hanging out after 10 o'clock at night. And I just don't, this is the problem for me, is I'm just not quite sure what problem we need to solve yet. And I think that would be the first step in all of this, is understanding the problem.
Well, it seems to me it's no programming. If you don't have a program, then there's nothing there for them to do. except for exercise their own brains, which doesn't seem to be happening. Other than going to play pool or ping pong or something like that, not being creative. If you can't even get, what do you want? I don't know. You know what I mean?
No, and I understand that.
And so there's got to be some successful programming. You can't just have a place for them to go and then leave them on their own, in a sense, is because nothing's going to happen, and we get the end result is kind of what we got is the numbers all of a sudden just collapsed. I mean, we went from 10 years ago, maybe kids changed, but they haven't changed all that much. I mean, kids are still kids, in a sense. Maybe they got different games or access to this, but still, I think, you can have some kind of programs that engage them. And it seems like, maybe in the movement area of some fun physical games or something, you know what I mean?
No, I understand, but I mean, part of it, I'd like to ask the teens what they feel like they're lacking in this town, as well as asking the parents what experiences are their kids not getting that they would like them to get. Because part of it is that when we do send flyers home to families through the school, we don't get response back. And it's either because the kids don't we've asked the kids, do you want to go to Santa Cruz? Do you want to go to baseball games? And we get no response. So the question is working with parents, working with the teens, is saying what is it that we're trying to accomplish? Because I agree with the basic idea that we're putting money towards something that we're not solving any real problems with. So let's find out what the problem is that we need to solve, and then figure out what's the best way to solve that problem. Because it may be that parents are maybe what the issue for a lot of parents may be is that they need more time for their kids to do studying, and the teen center is never going to be a place to study because it's it's much more that's better accomplished up at the school's library. So maybe providing more time at the school library might be a better way to accomplish that, rather than a teen center.
Yeah, as we're having this discussion, I look at this $87,000, not for the teen center, but I look at it as $87,000 that we as a council want to spend on our teenagers to provide something outside of the regular school schedule, something that we think would invigorate them, to give them something to do during the summertime. And so, I see Bob in the audience, and maybe that's a discussion that we can have with the school district, and how do we, engage those middle school kids. Maybe there are some suggestions that could come from the school district in providing something for them during that after-school time.
Yeah, I know in the past, and I guess, Steve, you could probably chime in on this, but we had a somewhat active youth advisory council that, kind of really helped set up their own programs and stuff, and so that doesn't seem to be happening, I guess, huh?
Ever since Katie left, we have been staggering to recover. And when Katie, Clay's daughter, left, we had a real good one, and I've actually had 0 applicants the last 3 years to even join, and it's been in the activity guide, it's been on our website, it's gone home in the school packets. So in 3 years, I haven't had one applicant to even join the youth advisory committee. It's kind of, it's just really hard to even fight the indifference. Is frustrating.
In just a second, we have our 2x2 meeting with the school board later this month, and let's put that on as one of the items that we talk about. I look at this as maybe there's an opportunity to not only save some money, but also to provide something that you'll get more kids wanting to participate in. So maybe allowing the subcommittee to be able to have that dialogue with the school, with the members of the school board.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of nuances with this. I mean, because if you go with closing a building and everything, I mean, there's a lot to this. If not just
Stuart, I mean, if we close the building,
what type of savings? I know there are, there's the depreciation, those types of costs. But if we just closed down the teen center and we didn't have a program for teens, what kind of savings are we looking at?
We would save our cost for our part-time employees. Some janitorial.
So that whole variable facilities costs would go away with $34,000?
Yes. So we spend about $41,000 in part-time salaries. So most of that would go away if we didn't have the teen center. We spend trying to think, and then we would save money in our facilities budget for the teen center. So I mean, we'd save probably close to $50,000.
Okay.
But I think it's one of those areas where we just need to really understand what it is that we're trying to accomplish. What we were trying to accomplish 10 years ago is probably not the same thing because we've accomplished it in different ways. If you go down by the basketball courts in the skateboard park, there are people there all the time. So they don't 10 years ago when we didn't have those, they would go hang out at the teen center.
Mm-hmm.
I think the library's become more popular over the years
because of the computers.
Because the computers have become better and more accessible over the years. And I think those are the kinds of things that are the challenges that that we face. I think there's some truth to the fact that without a very regular Parks and Recreation coordinator who has a real dedication in the field, which is different from when you hire senior rec leaders who are that's just basically a part-time job that they're trying to do while they're in school. They may not have a real love for recreation or a understanding of childhood psychology. And it's hiring at that different, potentially hiring at a different level, but we have frozen the position in order to save money.
Yeah, I know where that's coming from. Just having coached, you could have a program where there's a lot of kids coming out for the team. Then you get a new coach, same sport, but then the dynamics that particular coach had with the athletes is no longer there, and then you see that nosedive in that program.
Yeah.
And so,
Well, I think Cliff, maybe you're suggesting them bringing it up with the 2x2 about some activities at the schools, one thing, but I'd like the Parks and Rec to have a cut at it to see if they can.
No, I
do anything.
agree.
I would like before we really like to understand it.
I don't think we're making any decision about it. We're just throwing out those suggestions.
Mm-hmm.
I think getting some feedback from the school district would actually help the Park and Rec Commission in their full evaluation of do you keep this teen center open or do you partner with the school and do you get more computers? You pay for those costs. To get the more, to get those computers, and maybe that helps the school district and helps those kids after school, and so now you got these, win-win situations, and you have that fixed cost, and you know that those computers will last X amount of years, and you're getting more bang for the buck. But of course, in the end, you can never replace a person who's really good at their job and engaging those kids too. So. Well, I think looking at both of those two things is good. Somebody, you have something you want to say?
It looks like if we keep doing what we've been doing, we're going to get what we've been getting. Nothing. Okay? I really like the idea of sending into recreation commissioners. Let them study rather than this going to 2x2. because I think this is a little bit bigger than just two by two. Recreation Commission can get the school involved to get their input. Teens do have needs too. We as an adult sitting here trying to come up with programs for teens without really understanding them. So I really think it should go back to the Recreation Commission, let them work on it, come up with a suggestion. And one thing that I had heard from some teams, they felt unsafe. There were some elements that were attending the teen center that they didn't feel safe about it, and the parents wouldn't let them go. And some of us don't even know. Do you remember about the shuttle that we had? There was no ridership on that shuttle because there was one passenger that really smelled really bad, and this has been going on 3-4 years, and nobody would say anything about it. The same situation, there was some teens talked to me about that they didn't feel safe.
Okay, so I think we've just to move things along. I think we have two options where two routes we can take. Having it go back to having this item go to the Park and Rec Commission, and then also having a discussion with during the 2x2 committee meeting.
Both of those make sense to me, especially the Parks and Recreation Commission. But I think in the meantime, if we're serious about cutting some funds out of the budget that are not being spent well, I think we just should close the teen center, not necessarily permanently, but for the time being, and leave some money in for some kind of teen programs, whatever that might be, but that would at least save the building, the people who are sitting there not doing much because there's not many people to do anything with. I think if we're serious about actually cutting some money, here's a place where we can cut money. Close the building down for the time being, send it to all the commission and to others and say, okay, what we've been doing isn't working. Let's rethink it and come back with another program. Maybe we'll reopen that building. Maybe we'll do something else. But that's not for us to decide at this point. It's for others to sort of think about and then come back with a recommendation. Be my view.
Okay, I'm just confused here because it sounded like you said, yeah, let's close it and then get the information, and then you finished with, okay, it's not our decision to make right now. Let's get that
No, what
information.
the program's going to be.
So
the ultimate program.
Yeah, but so you're saying close the building down at this time.
Yeah.
Close the teen center down.
Yeah.
Okay. Terry, you've been silent over there, so.
I think that, I don't think I haven't seen a problem of roving bands of teenagers with nothing else to do but create mayhem. I haven't been involved with the Teen Center program, and so I have to take Steve's comments on how many kids it's serving, but I think that it's important to still have some opportunity for the kids to have face-to-face, interactive time, because too much of our time is Facebook friends and internet and unrealistic, not one-on-one and interaction with people. So I think it's real important that we keep the dances and the social activity and the things that can bring the kids together in a group, so that they gain those interactive, interpersonal skills. How you design a program and where you'd save money is difficult. I don't think that, the building that they're at is very conducive. So I think that we could revamp this and have some potential savings where a lot of our things are being done off-site anyway. So I do think that that has quite a bit of potential there.
Okay, so would you be in favor of closing the center down and studying how to redo how we structure funding for teenagers?
Yes, I would be.
I can make that motion if you wanted a motion. To close the teen for now, let the Recreation Commission study it. And that's why we increased the size of the recreation members to be able to do special projects and then come back with a recommendation, but try to save as much as create opportunities for teens to do something.
Mark?
I'd like to hear from the Recreation Commission before we make this decision on just some immediate things of what their feedback is, because they deal with youth much more than we do, and before we decide to do this, I would like some initial feedback that this is what we're looking at, and tell us why not. I mean, I don't want to leave those 5 or 6 kids who maybe really need it and who may be on the cusp, out in the street, so to speak.
So, I mean, what may make sense is that we keep it open for the summer, and we study the issue over the summer, and make a decision what we're going to do with the school year.
I think that's a good recommendation.
As we've talked about before, we're not going to be able to finalize all of those, all that information, and analyze it all by the time we need to do this budget. But that is something that now we've set that timetable till the end of the summer. We'll keep the teen center open, and then make that recommendation once that information is presented.
The goal is to send it to recreation.
Yeah.
In whatever means, now
Right.
or later, whatever.
Right. But we should make it clear that, unless something changes in terms of the effectiveness of the program, we have some real doubts about whether it's a good expenditure of money.
Sure. All right, Carolyn.
Moving on to the Sunrise Room and senior programs. Everything except for senior lunches is captured in this graph because the senior lunches take place in the community center, so that's on another chart. But basically the part-time staff and the instructor payments for the senior classes, such as movement, art, and computer classes, is what takes up the bulk of this pie chart, or the total variable costs. Fixed costs is the staff, the recreation supervisor who oversees the senior program, and the city distributed costs is in green. The Sunrise Room was open in 2011 for approximately 1,250 hours. It's open Monday through Friday, 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. And there is no cost recovery level graphs, as there's no revenue to allow for that. Is there any council discussion on this
Any
item before we move on to Mission Blue?
questions from...
More than 5.
Yeah, right.
Any questions for staff?
I do.
Comments? Okay. Yeah,
Um,
okay.
I don't care. No, I don't.
Because my family uses some of these services, so I know a little bit about how they're working, and I guess it's a question that I would like maybe the Parks and Recreation Commission to investigate, because we're going to ask them to look at all these things, and are we really spending money wisely? And one of the things that we could look at is, do we really need to have, when we have instructors there, do we really need to have recreation staff there too? It seems redundant, unnecessary. I mean, they're nice people and all that, but why do we need them there when we have, professional instructors there? I don't know, is there some legal reason or what the story is, but you notice it's $20,000. So it's a question. I mean, I don't know what the appropriate answer is, but if we're looking at how do we justify how we're spending money, that's certainly a question that's worth investigating.
And there's a lot of similarities to the teen center. So how many seniors typically are at the Sunrise Room on a given day? 15 to 20 on a daily basis. Okay. And is it typically the same folks that show up?
I'll let Russ answer.
We see a fairly consistent usage by the same people day in and day out. Brisbane being a small town, we have X amount of seniors, and their usage seems to be fairly regular as to who's there and what time and what program they're participating in.
Okay. So it would be fairly safe to say that that the majority of the money that is spent, that's allocated for the Sunrise Room, is affecting 15 to 20 folks that are the same people.
I would have to look at the chart to see, I'm talking about who's there on a day-to-day basis, but I would have to look and see overall. We keep a list of who comes in. We know pretty much everybody. Councilman Miller had mentioned that his family participates in the programs. I could tell you right now what programs his family participates in. Given some time to look into that, I could get back to you with that information. I don't have it on my fingertips. If I may comment, though, quickly to Councilman Miller's comment regarding staff and contract instructors. Again, those are contract instructors. Their forte is teaching a class, a specific class that they're skilled at, movement, art, and those are really the only two classes that take place in the facility. They don't really have the ability to work with the seniors. They don't know the seniors. We found it's very important. The other day we had a choking incident. Nobody responded to that choking incident except our staff person who reached over and performed the Heimlich maneuver. That's the kind of thing that you want to have a person there. If you talk to your seniors, who frankly are not much different than the participants at the teen center, they're just older and don't use the F word as often. They have the same needs, and those people that are staffing the facility are really what draws the participants in. They're getting that interaction that you're talking about that you want to see with the teens. Well, they're getting that through the staff that's there, who helps them on a daily basis with things that you and I might take for granted. So I wouldn't discount their participation quickly. I really wouldn't, and I'm sure that if we did more investigation, that you would find that you would agree with me.
Can I? Number one problem with some seniors, they have no other activities. They would just be in the room. And depression, loneliness is one major problem with our seniors. Am I correct to state that?
I think that for the senior population, that's a fair assumption. I think any population, if they're left to their own devices without social interaction, would face those same issues. It's particularly problematic with seniors. I anecdotally can speak to several cases. There was one gal at the senior center for years. I didn't know that she could talk. Honestly, I would see her every day. She never would talk to me. She finally opened up with one of our staff people, and we found out she's a wonderful individual. Again, that's anecdotal, but you see those kind of things happening on a day-to-day basis, and it really is truly a wonderful thing to see.
Right. At the same time, what I heard Ray mention is that look to see if we can do it more efficiently. Not that there might not be a need. Is in what way can we improve on what we have to serve the people at the same time, do it efficiently? I think
I have to be brutally honest with you. I really am very proud of our program there for the amount of people that we serve, and we're always dealing with an economy of scale in Brisbane. Right. We look at other cities as a foster city where they have 40,000 people and they're drawing in 10 times the number of people we are.
Right.
For the size that we are, we offer really a wonderful program. We can, of course, look at cutting corners and nailing things down maybe a little tighter. But with the Sunrise Room, I got to be honest with you, it's really working for the most part. And I would invite anybody from the council to come on down, have a cup of coffee, have a cookie. I'm sure you'd get an earful. I'm positive they would love to have you down there.
Anything else?
No, I think you're doing a definitely great job.
Thank you,
No
ma'am.
doubt. I'm very proud you bring movies for them. Yeah, I think you've been a very incredible contributor.
I got to tell you, just since you brought that up, we do a movie day, and people look at movie day and they say, okay, that's, what do you plop in a CD and you let that go. The staff person who staffs that carries on a conversation afterwards. One of the ways that we can show movies without having to pay licensing fees is it's part of an educational process. So she does a discussion afterwards. I took art of the film in college, and I got a lot less out of it than I did from sitting around watching, a movie with the seniors. They're engaged. They talk about the movie. There's some feedback. It really is. It's amazing to watch. It really is.
Well, one thing I've learned about the seniors in Brisbane over many, many years is if something's not working, you'll know about it.
Yes, sir.
And if it's working, you're not going to hear much. So it seems to be working.
As a healthy community, we need to have services for our seniors, for our teens, for our adults. And at the same time, can we afford to do what we've been doing? That's my thing.
Any other questions? I just wanted to just follow up with this. So the Sunrise Room for the seniors does not include the activities that happen at the community center.
No, so that's a separate group. The senior club is a self-determining group. They decide their own programs. The city supports them with some subsidization. We support them with some staff time. I support them with my good offices, and I barbecue once a month for them. Mm-hmm. But that's sort of a separate group, not to be included with the Sunrise Room.
All right. And is there an overlap between those two?
Yes, there is, and actually they're symbiotic. There's a certain melding between the two. There were people who would go to the Sunrise Room and wouldn't go to the club, and vice versa. And a lot of those barriers are coming down now, so they're really starting to jive together. And again, I'm gonna hoot the horn, but I think that really comes from the part-time staff who work there.
Yeah, for sure. Because I mean, that part-time staff has been with this group for many years, and so there's that trust that's been established.
And gosh, they're just good people. They like what they do. They enjoy it. They enjoy the people they're working with, and it shows.
I mean, I really like this program. The only thing that I have some issue with is that the amount of folks that we're serving for this amount of money seems small, and it seems to be the same folks all the time. And so what I'd like to see, and I don't know if the facility can accommodate more people, but it seems like if we had more people and that cost was spread out amongst more folks. To me, then it becomes a better service to the community.
One of the challenges you face when you're programming for seniors is nobody wants to admit they're a senior. And once they admit they're a senior, it's the beginning of the end. So they don't want to go to the Sunrise Room. A lot of people will come down, and they will have a good time.
Better than the Sunset Room.
Yeah, for sure.
They do sort of fight that moniker that they're a senior. We recently had our director who has left, but it officially become a senior. And I sort of joked with him, and I said, well, you're going to come down. And he said, oh, no, it's not for me. So
I'm too young for that.
Too young.
All right, thanks, Russ.
You're welcome.
Okay, Caroline?
Okay, so moving on to Mission Blue. This is just to show you that the cost recovery is pretty high when you take into account just the variable costs. And the Mission Blue Center does do, well, it did in 2011, $78,000 in revenue from private rentals. And as Stuart mentioned, this is something that the Parks and Rec Commission discussed at length with the fees for private rentals, because there were 60 resident rentals and 15 non-resident rentals. And going on to this graph, it shows that the private rentals is a pretty good size of the usage of the facility, and it is what brings in the revenue to subsidize the costs, which are about $232,000 total. And I think Stuart will talk more about the fee later. But this is a breakdown of the other usage of Mission Blue Center. And you can see that there is, next to private rentals is the use of Mission Blue by nonprofits and co-sponsored groups or events, followed by recreation classes and city events, such as meetings and trainings that take place there. So a total of 1,565 hours in 2011. So now to go through some of the Mission Blue programs. We mentioned the co-sponsored events. Took place for a total of 166 hours. These events include Artist Evening of Sharing live at Mission Blue, the Women's Club Shakespeare movie, or actually performance that comes every year, the Brisbane Dance Workshop spring performance and practices, as well as a vocal adult voice class, Brisbane Library Filmmaker Series. And the breakdown of costs for these various events, most notably the Artist Evening of Sharing and Live at Mission Blue and the spring performance, are captured in the program-specific costs and the staff. And again, the cost of the facility is the 166 hours that co-sponsored events took place, multiplied by the cost of the fixed costs and the citywide distributed and the non-cash divided amongst the usage, total usage. Next are a couple classes. So there's 10.5% cost recovered from Tai Chi, which is in Mission Blue for 55 hours, and yoga has slightly more cost recovered, 24.7. And there's also meditation that takes place, 15.3%. Country line dance takes place at Mission Blue. Oil painting as well, that's 25.3%. Sorry about, it's hard to read. I think there's one more. Oh, that's all for Mission Blue programs. If you wanted to discuss anything at this time, or should I move on to community center?
Under citywide distributed cost, the total expenditure of Mission Blue was $232,000, but $122,000 of that is indirect cost. I wonder if we could get a little more clarification as to what that covers.
The indirect cost, again, is the administration overhead expense for...
Yeah, I mean the breakdown, not just the categories, but a breakdown.
So how that number was derived?
Right.
I looked in the budget under the 11-12 approved budget, and I took the facility, youth, adult, special events, those 4 different divisions of the Parks and Recreation budget, and each of those had a indirect costs row. And since Mission Blue has programming that covers, well, it's a facility, there are some adult programs and special events that take place in there, then I thought to divide the indirect costs of Mission Blue total expenses plus all the facilities of the city that the city oversees, the teen center. No, not the teen center because that has its own cost division, but the community center, the Mission Blue Center, and there was one other facility. Oh, the BS Modular. So a lot of youth activities take place in the modular, and that's not really captured in terms of indirect costs anywhere. So I took those three different divisions plus facilities in order to come up with the total indirect cost number, and then I multiplied out by the number of the total number of expenses that each of those facilities had, fixed costs and variable costs, in order to get the indirect costs. So Mission Blue had 70.7% of the total expenses of the three facilities that were being looked at in order to have that indirect cost. And so that's how that $121,000 was derived. And the same goes for liability insurance and workers' compensation. Just to try to keep everything consistent and having citywide distributed costs. How do you find that with just one facility that the city oversees?
Still strikes me as a high percentage. And I understand the logic of your analysis, but I mean, it's over 50%. It just strikes me as too high.
We could look at that, see if there's a different method that we could use to distribute the indirect costs. The only thing that will happen is this will go down, something else will go up, of course.
But others, I saw others that seemed okay or too low.
And that might,
this one seems too high.
Okay, we'll take a look.
Caroline, just trying to get a handle on why some items have a lower cost recovery. Say, for example, the country line dance. Well, why is it that the cost of the facility is so high at $14,000, but the cost recovery is 6.4, and then comparing that to say yoga, how do we get to close to 25%, and we're collecting more money, but even though the costs for the facility are at 18.
Yeah, a lot of it has to do with the revenue that comes in, but what Councilmember Miller just brought up with the indirect cost, if that were lower, then that would in turn lower the cost of the facility, which is derived from multiplying the hours that program took place in that facility by the cost of the facility per hour. And so that's why we needed to look at how many hours Mission Blue was used. So it was used a total of 1,565. And so that number was divided by the total expenses. And so since indirect cost is part of those expenses, if that were to be lower, then it would in turn lower the cost of the facility, raising the cost recovered. So.
Yeah, but I mean, so I look at, say, yoga and country line dancing. Yoga can cover 25% of itself, line dancing 6.4%. So do you use this type of information to determine whether or not that particular activity should stay in use, or should we be moving on to some other activity that perhaps more people will participate in and thus have a greater cost recovery percentage?
Sure.
This is, of course, one of the challenges when we're looking at this kind of information. If we don't have another program to replace the country line dancing, it at least is using the building and covering some of the more than its variable cost.
I saw the instructor is cheaper than the non-line.
Right. So, without having something else to replace it, it still makes some sense to have this. And it's a program that, there are people who enjoy using it.
Yeah, and so and then I guess my next question is that are we turning away people that would pay for Mission Blue?
Country Line Dance takes place in a 9 primetime hour. It's Thursday nights. It's okay for classes. It's not a rental night.
Okay. So,
Yeah.
Thank you for providing that information. So, if we had something that was low-cost recovery, it's in a time slot that is not it's not going to be an active time slot to bring in revenue if we rented it to private sector.
It's not in a good time for private rentals. It's not particularly in a good time for classes. It's later in the evening, after 7 o'clock. Your prime time is 5:30 to 7. We would look at that class and possibly replace it if we had a class that was deemed to be more popular, such as a fitness class, which is what we're working on now for Thursday nights during a prime time hour. Bringing classes to Brisbane is always difficult because our numbers are fairly low compared to other communities. So it is a difficult process.
All right, and so Stuart, kind of like what we've been talking about, if you took out that class or took out that activity, you'd apply those costs somewhere else, but because you have it in here, then you have to apply dollars to it. Right, okay, that makes sense. So, all right.
I have one question. The meditation class has less than 13 hours used. Is that because it's a new class?
I think it was canceled.
I asked Russ for various class hours.
If I may, that was not a particularly popular class, and it died of natural causes.
Fell asleep.
Too much meditation.
Okay, Caroline.
Okay. So moving on to the community center.
Oh, I do have just one quick question. So the water use for landscaping at $13,000, that's just for around the Mission Blue Center. It doesn't include the
field.
The field.
Right.
Right. But there's upper and lower landscaping. That's how, at least it's titled in the line item.
Okay.
But it doesn't include the field. The field has its own account.
Okay. It seems like a lot of money for landscaping in that area, but I guess it adds up. Okay.
So the community center had just over, $2,800 in revenue in 2011, and you can see the various cost level recoveries. The usage was mostly nonprofits and co-sponsored events, 76% of the total hours, which were 1,647. And this is where the senior club has their Wednesday luncheons. So they're 11%, recreation classes 10, and private rentals 3%. Mostly, Saturdays and Sundays during the year. The senior club, as Russ mentioned, has a subsidy from the city, and there's the cost of the facility that's included, as well as the staff. And about 180 hours are used by the seniors for their luncheons. Nonprofits have used the facility for 1,259 hours, and those nonprofit and co-sponsored groups include BDW for their classes, the Lions Club, the library, Best PTO, Seniors Club, Alcoholics Anonymous, AYSO, and BBCAG. So there's the various expenses tied to nonprofits and co-sponsored groups. Followed by classes. Taekwondo takes place for 96 hours in the facility, does pretty good cost recovery, 53.2%. And Zumba is a newer class that took place for 17 hours only in 2011 and had a cost recovery of 48.8%. And we have programs for the youth, which include Music with Andrew, and that had a 31.1% cost recovery. Tiny Tots is taught by the Mothers of Brisbane. Is that correct? Yes. And that had a 16.1% cost recovery. And the preschool summer camp took place at the community center for 28 hours with actually made money, 101.5% cost recovered. And that's it for the community center. Any questions?
On the first line item, you have the senior club, and then you have nonprofits co-sponsored, and you've got the senior club again. So is that figures from?
Probably bingo night. There's two different programs that go on there, right?
Are you looking at this chart from the staff report, or?
She's looking at like the next box down.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Previous page.
Yeah, Senior Club is listed twice.
It is?
Once on their own and then as a nonprofit.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I might have included the senior club in that 1259, so that would need to be deducted 180. But I would have to double check that. I might also have just listed them as a nonprofit or co-sponsored group. I can't recall at the moment. But that is the hours that they were in this facility, 180.
There's the bingo night that's sponsored by the seniors, right? Or who's that sponsored?
I think it's sponsored by the Lions on Wednesdays.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that.
And I do have the subsidy from the city for the senior club, the $20,400.
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't that discussed somewhere else in the?
I think I might have mentioned that it wasn't included in the Sunrise Room, but that it was going to be included with the senior club on the community center page.
It was also part of my presentation.
Okay, and the differences between those two programs. I know that's. I guess we're looking at the cost, so I'll bring that up later. Thank you.
I have a question on it. That subsidy from the city, that primarily is for the luncheons, right?
It is. It goes towards lunches. I think a little bit may go towards some of their trips as well.
Yeah, right.
How many people use the lunch?
You can.
It's fairly
30, 40?
Yeah.
40.
Yeah.
Those are very well attended,
That's
especially barbecues.
very successful.
Yeah.
Right.
But have we ever tried any cost recovery, a couple bucks or something like that, or has that been sort of a no-no?
I think what it's been in the past, and correct me if I'm wrong, but they developed their own program of which the luncheon is part of it.
Right.
And that's what they utilize the funds, so they manage their own, and that's what's given to them as a subsidy to create their own program.
Uh-huh.
And the Sunrise Room is in addition to that.
Yeah, I understand that.
Yeah.
I think the seniors pay a little bit. Right. So the seniors do pay a little bit to the senior club, but we don't see that as part of our costs, and we're also not showing you the full cost that the seniors pay for their lunches.
Oh, okay.
This is just the city's cost of those.
And how often are those events?
The lunches are every Wednesday.
And there are some people who can very easily afford to pay for the lunch. Am I not correct? I'm not saying to charge them, but I'm just...
There is a monthly dues, and I believe it's $10 a month to be a participant. From that, you are able to participate in bingo and then lunch. For the trips, then there is a separate copay, I think is the term they use, depending on the trip. There is a fee attached, so there is some out-of-pocket cost for the seniors to participate.
Stuart, of the subsidy, how much goes towards the food and how much goes towards the trips? Approximately.
You know, I haven't looked at that for a while. They give us their breakdown of costs every year in July. So the last time I looked at it was July of last year.
All right. And we just give them this money and they manage it and spend it as they wish.
Yes.
Has it always been this amount?
No, it used to be a little bit lower.
A little bit lower. Okay. And do we provide this type of cash arrangement with any other groups in the city?
Well, we provide Chamber of Commerce the same amount every year, and we provide money for it, to Jefferson Union High School District to run some of their programs. So.
Okay. All right.
Okay, so next is the BES modular. And this is the facility that I provided an addendum on the dais for you because we had a very informative meeting this afternoon with the council member who pointed out the hours for the after-school programs could be more accurately calculated given minimum days and such. So that brought down the number of hours for kinder care, club rec, and preschool, and therefore the other percentages may just for winter camp and spring camp went up a percentage, but that's the only difference on this page. That was a result of today's meeting. And so going on to the different programs in the modular, starting with the camps. Winter and spring camp both took place for 70 hours. They're about 2 weeks each, and you see the cost recoveries of being 50.7% and 45.4%. Another change was the gas for the parks and recreation vans that take kids to different field trips. So the gas for those increased for all the camps actually, and the most being in the summer, since summer camp is 8 weeks and winter and spring are only 2 weeks, but they go for longer distances on their field trips because there's not as many kids. As you can see, summer camp did make money with 115% cost recovered. Followed by after-school programs, kinder care, club rec, and preschool all have fairly high cost recoveries. And you can see the hours as being 179.66, 651.66, and 560 for preschool, and the various costs. And that's it for the modular.
Any questions?
Any questions?
Could you give me a sense of the content of the club rec? What kind of program is that? What do they do?
I believe Russ can speak to that.
The Club Rec program specifically is for the children of BES after school. They run from, depending on the time of day, from 2:30 to 6 o'clock at night. They offer a specific program during the day. We work on children's homework. Again, there's one or two programs that they have scheduled during the day. As we've gone along through the years, we've found that not only has the program become more popular, we've become, in fact, a transfer station for children participating in various programs in the community, anything from our sports programs to programs offered by the school to CCD. So we have children coming and going outside of just what we offer. By 4 o'clock or so, most of the children are back on site. We offer a snack of 200 calories, a little bit more. By 5:30, most children are picked up, and by 6 o'clock, everybody has been picked up for the day.
So essentially, this is
school?
an after-school program.
Yeah.
It is an after-school program. We still focus on the parks and recreation aspect of it. One of the things that we try and do is give the children a chance to depressurize after a day of school, so that we do not, we give them a chance to take a break directly after school. We don't rush them right into program unless we have specifics from their parents. We don't force them to do their homework right away. We give them a chance, like I said, to depressurize. But usually at some point, each child is to focus on their homework in the classroom and to participate in the program that's set out during the day.
Doesn't the school have also homework center?
Yes, ma'am, they do, but that homework center is for children who are Title I or children who have special needs. So not all children can participate in that program.
Oh, somehow something sounds weird, but they're not supposed to be either. Bob maybe would know that. People with Title I kids should not be what they call identified, so others know that they are Title I kids.
I got to be honest with you, ma'am, I don't know the specifics of that. Originally, that program was set up to work with all children who were interested in, and we originally had brought in children in sort of a platoon fashion. We would bring groups in to do their homework. Right. At some point, the school felt that it would be better served to deal with children that they felt needed the help.
Thank you.
Questions?
I can make a comment. I could say that this is probably one of the most dynamic programs in the city for the youth, because that transition, how important it is for them when they get out of school and go into a program that's on the campus. It makes a big difference, and show up there sometime about 3:30, 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yeah,
It's pretty wild. So,
do we have any numbers on all of these? I mean, they seem like very successful programs, but we don't have any numbers as to how many kids are participating in all of these.
I believe that we produce a document every month that has those numbers. I've got to be frank with you, I don't remember specifically what it is month to month.
I have that document here.
Wonderful.
Just in case.
well, you can take that 58,000 divided by 35. That'll give you a rough number.
Right.
Your rough estimate.
So between January and March of 2011, Club Rec had 50 registrants, 48 being residents and 2 being non-residents, and average 14 drop-ins per day. And during April through June, I think it stays pretty much the same. Club Rec had 48 registrants, 46 being residents, 2 non-residents, and 17 drop-ins per day on average. And July through September, there were 57 registrants, 55 being residents, 2 non-residents, and 13 drop-ins per day. And at the end of the year, October through December, Club Rec saw 59 registrants, 54 residents, and 5 non-residents, and 16 average drop-ins per day.
That's a very high use.
A youth program that is working.
Yep.
And we have a teen one that is not, and I'm sure there's probably some information that can be gathered from this that could help those older kids.
May I ask a question?
Okay, yeah, go ahead, Tubby.
This is under recreation program. Is this really recreation program, or is this really supporting our educational? What is that? Sorry,
I mean, that's a hard question to answer, only because this is a program that our recreation department offers. I doubt the school district would have the ability to offer it in the same way that we do. There's a number of programs that we offer that support the schools.
Right.
To some extent, the teen dances that we do for Littman
Right.
supports the schools. A lot of the sports programs for the youth supports the schools.
Right, right. No, I wasn't asking whether this is belong to school or whatever, but it seems like mostly really for educational, to help the kids with their education versus actual physical recreation activity. Trying to understand that.
I mean, the program is much more, I think, there's a little bit of it that's geared towards having them do their homeworks, but a lot of it is for them to have free time to play with their friends.
Like recreation.
God, it's recreation then, okay.
Yes.
There's organized activities, too, that go along with that. And there's, free play, but organized activities, and then there's a homework part of it, and probably the major part of it is the overall socialization for the young kids that they develop.
Yeah, they need
Really
that.
important.
The cost recovery is at 89.5%. Is there a way you think we could get to 100%? So, I mean, what would that entail?
It's 94.9.
I see.
Well, it depends on what you're looking at.
There's a
I'm talking about the
revised,
whole entire.
there's a revised
module
schedule.
section.
It's 97.4, isn't it? For club rec, preschool, and kinder care.
Yeah, I'm talking about also the camps too. Just tying it all into one lump
Okay.
thing. I mean, we guess we could, you could look at that, and that would be an easier hurdle to climb.
And if that's the direction, we could work with the Parks and Recreation Commission to set up schedules, if that's what the council direction is for this.
The cost that we ask of the participants, the parents, has that stayed consistent?
No, I mean, what we do is we raise rates, and we're going to talk about it a little bit later with the fees, is, we look at inflationary increases every year. We don't raise the rates specifically every year because when you do an inflation on $8, it becomes 24 cents. So it takes 2 or 3, it may take us a little bit of time to get to that next whole dollar. So we have things like that, but, if the direction is to have full cost recovery for, these kinds of programs, we can work with Park and Recreation Commission and look at it ourselves to figure out how we can do that.
I think in some areas, when you're close, it'd be interesting to find out. I mean, there's going to be some areas, like the pool, you're never going to get there, so. But, yeah.
I mean, Club Rec seems to be doing very well, 94.9, for something that is very successful. And the area that it looks like that brings the average down is the winter and spring camp, which we talked about it earlier.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, really, if you looked at it, if you just remove the cost of facility, all of those are pretty much profitable, just about, except for the spring and winter camp. I mean, we would have that cost anyway, so this is looking at the full cost.
Right.
And so it's,
I have no
Yeah,
issue.
I know we'll have that conversation.
Yeah.
How do we,
should have that conversation about the pool. None of us said anything about that. So.
we are going to have that conversation.
That's a
about,
money pit.
How we look at what is the true cost and and backing out those things like the facility.
Yeah.
Right.
A couple of things. Excuse me. What we don't do here, which we did on some of the others, and maybe that, I don't know, I noticed that on the original one too, is the cost recovery looks like it's just for what we consider variable, but we don't have a cost recovery figure if we put the variable and the fixed together, and then what is the cost recovery? So it's not comparable with the other analyses, it looks to me anyway. See what I mean? Because you got cost recovery of fixed is 0%. Well, because we're not adding the two together.
Let's see.
At least that's what it looks like to me. Am I missing something?
For the modular, there's no fixed costs.
Yeah, but there's the indirect cost, right?
Right, and that's
Hourly work
spread out in the
comp, all that
cost of
stuff.
the facility.
Yeah. Janitorial, all those things are somehow or other, they're separated out, but they aren't included in an overall cost recovery figure, as I see it anyway. Am I missing something?
I wish I can click in the cell and see what was in there, but I believe
It's the facility cost, Ray, the
Right.
total variable facility costs, each one's broken down by each program. And if you totaled those numbers up, that would come out to the 94.98.
Is that the case? I guess that's
Yeah.
the question.
Yeah.
Right, so the facility was used, well, it's not 2,095 hours. That should be revised to 1921.32 hours. But 650 is the cost of the facility per hour. And so, see if we do 650 multiplied by 70 for winter camp, looking at, then that's...
But does it include the indirect cost? Is that included in the cost of the
Yes.
facility?
It's included in the cost of facility as well as with the other facilities that we looked at.
So that's differently done then, at least as I...
Yeah, it doesn't, I didn't think that it included.
So anyway, it's a little confusing to me. It seems to be a little differently done, the way it's presented. And if you can show me that that's not the case, that's fine. If it is the case, then maybe there's a little recalculation just to make everything consistent. But I could be wrong about how looking at this.
I'm pretty sure I took the facility costs and the citywide distributed, and I divided that number by originally 2,095, but it should be divided by 1921. But it would be a little bit more than $6.50.
Yeah, it's correct.
And then that number was multiplied by the hours used column for each of the programs.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so if that all works out, then, but it's not, it wasn't entirely clear how you did that. The other thing is that when it goes to the Parks and Recreation Commission, I didn't realize that the recreation staff has such a, complete report on numbers. And I think one of the things that we asked for originally was, the relationship between how much we're spending and the number of people participating, so we could get a sort of cost per participant figure. And this information is really good about cost recovery. The total amount of revenue we get that covers what we can identify as the variable and fixed cost. That doesn't really tell us how much is it costing per participant. None of this information does that, right? At least unless there's a way you can get it out of here.
Well, if you know the number or the amount of each class and dividing by the revenue for many of the classes, you can find out the participant.
Right. I mean, you can figure it out, but it's not the number that's presented here.
It can be easily extracted.
Anyway, my thought was that when it goes to Parks and Recreation, that it would be useful for them to have that information.
Yeah, sure.
Since we collected, it's all here. I mean, not as if you have to go out and count again or anything. I didn't know you had such a massive accumulation of data, which is great, but we're not using it fully, and so that way we would have more information. So how much is it costing us for people
and you want the whole cost
to take this class, to take this program, per person, per student, or per whatever?
We will provide that to Parks and Recreation.
I'm sorry, you said you're going to provide it to Recreation Commission?
Right. That was what Ray had suggested, that we provide, when we provide this information to Parks and Recreation Commission, that we also provide the cost per participant to them.
And I thought for us too.
Well, when it would come back to you after they'd seen it.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. But, I mean, isn't it based on, like how many days and the amount of hours? I mean, so many different variables. I mean, you're looking at all these different things. I mean,
I think what we're trying to get is how many people are served by each program. so that we get a good idea of this is going to affect 6 people or 50 people. I think that's the data that Ray is trying to.
I
get.
hear you. I mean, yeah, and I think that's good. I mean, the amount of exposure. How many per person hits you get. I mean, but that you could have 100 people getting hit, once a month, and you could have 50 people getting hit 20 times a month, and there's going to be more for those people. So I mean, I'm just wondering how you're going to work that out, Stuart.
Well, I think my guess is that we were looking for how many unique individuals there are that are participating, and then what would be the total participants in the program. So you'd have both. So if something happens daily and if something happens 5 times a week and you have on average 5 people, we would say we've provided to 25 people. Out of that 25 people, 17 of them are unique individuals. So it covers both issues.
All right.
Can I ask another question, if I may? On the BES modular that we were talking about, variable cost, the janitorial, is it actually you code this much cost for the modular, or is it by square footage? How do you determine?
There's a cost for janitorial for the modular unit, just like there's a cost for janitorial for Mission Blue or for any other of our facilities.
Yeah, that's the amount that was expended in calendar year 2011 on janitorial services and supplies.
Thank you. So their actual cost. Thank you.
Right.
Ray, I could answer your question on a facility about that bottom number.
Okay.
Is what happened is the spreadsheet didn't carry the revised number down,
Oh, okay.
so it's actually 12,000 and something
Okay.
on the revised. So the spreadsheet didn't calculate that, so it's about $1,200 less. So if you look at what was originally given to what we have now,
Oh, that's right, because this is revised.
so it never carried down.
Right,
So
right.
that's the difference.
So the bottom box needs to be revised.
Can you,
Bottom box would be
Can you resend this?
12,400 and
Yes,
something.
they will.
Okay.
she's going to resend this.
Yeah.
Got it.
All right, Karen.
Okay.
Some of this is a little bit difficult to read at the extension PPTX.
Oh, I can change it to .ppt.
Yeah,
You should be able to open it without a problem.
thank you.
Okay, sorry about that.
No problem.
So these next 3 programs don't necessarily have a facility to tie it with. Track and field is at Littman Blacktop, and tennis is at Littman Courts, which are not regularly maintained by the city as the fields and the community park are. So that's why it's here on this page. And boot camp fitness is a class that takes place at the community park. So rather than just have one class at the park by itself, I just decided to put it here with the other 2 programs or classes. So they don't have a cost of facility included. Any questions? Okay. The community park, I wanted to just lay out for you the different costs that went into factoring the fixed costs, because they're not going to be detailed like this on every single field, but they're very similar. The only thing that would change is depending on the number of man-hours that were used for each of the fields, which I worked with the Public Works team leader on. The rest of the types of costs are the same. So every field has turf grass maintenance, where there's mowing and trimming and edging, and recently we've contracted out for aerating, fertilizing, and top dressing. So that's been split amongst the 3 different fields. And there's also material costs that are fixed costs, are part of the fixed costs, and there's irrigation costs and most of them have non-cash costs too for the equipment that's used for doing this work on maintaining the grass. So just in terms of,
Provide this in the packet?
Yeah, it's a couple
It's in the-
pages
it's-
after.
Yes.
Yeah, you got to go back.
yeah, I decided to move it up.
It's towards the end.
Towards the end?
Yeah.
There you go. No, no.
Second to last.
Yeah.
There you go.
Lippman Field? No.
Go
Mission
more.
Blue Field?
There you go.
Oh, here it is.
Yeah, sorry about that. In the staff report, I had it after all the fields, but I thought so that you can see the different types of costs that go into all of the fields and the community park, I would bring that to the forefront. So the community park had $10,000 approximately in revenue from picnic rentals and gazebo rentals, and with all the costs, it's about 15.1% cost recovery.
Oh, wait a minute. Where?
It should be after,
Is patient, but what's missing, yours says community park along the edge. Ours is blank. So I had no idea.
It says on the bottom of it.
Yeah, it's way in little tiny print on the bottom. Yeah. That's why I couldn't find it.
yeah.
But it is here.
Okay, great.
But do we have a spreadsheet for the community park? You're talking about the community park rentals, and I don't see anything about the community park in my package.
It's on page 12 of the staff report packet. Second to last.
That's it, Terry. Right there.
Yeah, it just doesn't say community park and
Look down at the bottom. Does it say
It
community
says
park at
community
the
park
bottom?
way down the bottom.
Okay,
All
but you
little
didn't
print.
do this
You didn't
kind
do
of
all the
spreadsheet.
graphics and all that kind of
no, because there's no classes
Right.
or programs really tied to the park.
Okay.
Well, we wanted to do all the events together. I mean, obviously concerts in the park and day in the park their location
Okay.
is community park, but this just shows the costs of the park. Okay, so I guess I'll just move on to,
You know, I did have a question. The empty trash receptacles. So, is that just comparing it to my own garbage needs, and I'm sure, and of course, there's more cans, of course, out of the community park, but do we get like a special rate from the South San Francisco scavengers to do this? It's our guy that does it. Okay, so
Right.
he takes the plastic bags out and then puts them into a
cart.
larger can. Okay, so to empty out the trash cans, it costs us $11,000.
yeah, the way that was calculated was it takes about 1.5 man hours, and it's done 3 times a week, 52 weeks a year.
Okay.
And at the rate of, I believe we used $47 an hour for that maintenance worker, which includes benefits as well as salary.
Okay, so it's all calculated into
Right.
to that. Yeah, it's just it's one of those things that's interesting to see how the costs rise. For something that you think is just a minor thing, just taking out the trash at the park.
A lot of trash cans, I guess.
What's debris removal?
Just picking up debris around the park. That's not in the trash cans. It was,
So you're talking about litter,
right.
litter pickup.
Also, dog remains from the irresponsible dog owners.
So that's half an hour, 3 times a week at that $47 per hour rate. But litter pickup is what that is.
So that's, and then the 7 cubic yards of sand, is that what we end up taking out of the drains every year?
Maybe from the water fountains.
Yeah, I just
Or just to replace the sand that's in the play box.
Just going back to the trash, I mean, is that something that we could contract out? Or there's some liability issues?
Contract it out, it would probably cost more.
Oh, it costs
Yeah.
more.
And we can always look at contracting stuff like that, but we have a guy that we bring in on the weekends. He actually works with us full-time now, but in the past he was in the weekends.
And this is just
This night.
This is just for the community park.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I was going to bring up the issue of dog, Ray, the dog email that we got.
Mm-hmm.
Whose responsibility it is to clean it? I know people shouldn't do that, but they do it.
Some do, yeah.
So whose responsibility is it to clean it?
Well.
The sidewalks on visitation that is irritating to people. I was just talking about the email that we got about the dog debris on visitation. Whose responsibility really is it to clean that?
Well, at the moment, I mean, it is city property. It is city right away. So, we would be the ones who would be responsible for it.
Right. And we were talking about...
I mean, although having said that, people do have a responsibility, and that's why we provide the mud mitts and stuff to
Of course,
clean
of
up
course.
after their animals.
But a few bad actions from some people creates this problem. Majority of people who have dogs show responsibility and use the mitts and take care of it, but it's really can become really sore thumb. And downtown, when business people go for lunch or residents walk around, so that's creating some frustration on behalf of people. And I know we talked about how much are the cost of those dog mitts?
The public works director was telling me this morning that we spend a fairly...
I think your microphone's on, Clay.
It is on.
Oh, okay.
So the public works director this morning was telling me that we do spend a fairly significant amount of dollars on mutt mitts. We have them around 4 or 5 different places in the city. Stuart's trying to track down the mutt mitt budget.
Yeah, while he's doing that, may I make a quick observation about something else? One of the things that when you look at all the turf maintenance and you look at all the water costs, I began to think if there were some way we could use recycled water, you might be able to save some money. We'd have to have a recycling water system, and, you got to get it all up and going, I understand, but I know that some other cities have done that, but maybe that's something when we get to the Baylands, we can kind of build that in maybe, and think about the recycled water not only out there, but, available for all of the fields that we have to maintain, or parks, what have you, because, it's really getting up there, that total amount we spend on irrigation water, and of course that water we're putting out there now is drinking water, right?
Right. Drinking water is standard, yeah.
And so,
I know the public works director has looked at that issue even with regards to development out at Sierra Point and doing some off-site improvements with the irrigation system in town. The only, I guess, everything has cause and effect, and we've gone through this with the subcommittee, but the city actually is the biggest client of the water department, and so if we significantly reduce our demand, that has an impact on the fixed cost of the system and the rates. It's just one of those kind of inverse and somewhat perverse realities.
perverse is the best word.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
It's unfortunate.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. We save
Much
the more it costs.
Okay. Well, we'll have to get back to you on the amount of dollars we spend on the mutt mitts.
Definitely tying that to the Baylands project for sure. All right, Caroline.
Okay, so moving on to BS Lower Field. BS, as you know, has 2 fields, but it's the lower field that most of the programs are played on, and that's the one that's tracked by the city with the online calendar. So in 2011, the field the lower field of BES was used 468 hours. Youth baseball, you're going to see youth baseball on BES lower field, Littman field, and Mission Blue Park field, just because it's played on all three various teams, but one cost center, so we just took a percentage of hours that each team played youth baseball on that field and took that same percentage for the revenue and for the expenses. So Revolution Youth Soccer is a team that pays $20 per hour to use the lower field. And Brisbane AYSO and CYSA use the field the most at 88% or 410 hours, and currently those are not hours that are charged.
Could you explain why that's the case?
Why they're not charged, or?
What's the history to that?
City Council has decided in the past not to charge youth soccer for the use of the facilities, similar to that we don't charge BDW for the use of the community center, or we don't charge the Lions for the community center. So it's just been a policy of the City Council.
Nonprofit organization.
Right.
Not to go, to regress, with the community center and also with Mission Blue, we have the nonprofit status. The nonprofit could be out of town and still receive the same benefits as a nonprofit in Brisbane, as far as costs are concerned.
Right. Depends on whether or not the event is open to the public.
Okay. All right. And how is that? I mean, I guess
we ask
determine that you notice it. Okay, we're gonna have this party with my church, and if anybody wants to come on down, they can, but probably won't. And they get
That's probably true.
Free. Okay, and that was something that the Park and Rec Commission did discuss.
They looked at nonprofits and they determined that they're perfectly happy with the current policy.
Okay, that's something we're gonna maybe talk about tonight if we continue.
We will talk about fees.
We will talk about fees.
It's 10:21.
Yeah, I know. Okay, Caroline.
Okay, so as I said, youth baseball was the only sport that took place on the BS lower field, and only 17.5% of the total hours, or 51 hours, was used on BS field. So you have the cost of the field being distributed 17.5% in this case, 11.2% cost recovery. Littman Field has a little bit more usage from different organizations, such as Last Call Ministries Baseball and Revolution Youth Soccer again. So they pay $20 an hour to use the field. Youth Baseball uses it, and Flag Football plays or has their practices at Littman Field and plays their games at Mission Blue. So you'll see that on the Mission Blue slide as well. Brisbane AYSO and CYSA again use the bulk of the field for 274 out of the 344 hours currently. So again, youth baseball, 15% took place here, so there's a cost recovery of 8.3%. Flag football, as I mentioned, the practices only are here, and the cost recovered is 14.3%. And that's it for Littman Field. I'm going to move on to Mission Blue Field. Okay. So as you can see, there's softball league rentals, which are paid for by the teams.
Could I ask just, so the Littman Field, just to make it clear, we are handling that totally, or is there any share at all with the school?
We maintain that field ourselves.
Yeah, there is a small amount of money that they pay us.
Okay.
And I can't remember exactly what it is. It's in our joint powers agreement with them.
But that would
wouldn't that show up in here?
Yeah.
Not as field rental, obviously, but as shared revenue or shared something.
We'll have to get you the numbers, but the way it works is that it gets washed through what we pay them, and so I think it gets netted out at the end of the year. But It's identified in the joint powers agreement.
You don't think it's very significant?
I'm, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking it's something like $3,000 a year or something like that.
So,
And in that joint powers agreement, we are committed to maintaining this field for them.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Well,
So-
Yes.
we're committed to maintaining the field for recreation purposes, yes.
So this is not something that really has budgetary discretion.
Well, no, I mean, you have, the joint powers agreement has an ability to, to opt out. I mean, it's not something that you're committed to forever.
Right, but right now you talk about cutting that, you would have all the board members here.
I think you'd have recreation people here before you had the board members. I mean, I think from the school district's perspective over the years, it was just simply a cost that they weren't willing to take on. But they were really kind of saw it more as a city recreation issue as opposed to a school issue.
No, 20 years ago, the fields were dead, dry as a bone.
well, when the schools had money, then they were happy to maintain them. And then, of course, Prop 13 came along, and they no longer could financially handle it.
Right.
I mean, if you think of the lower field, from Brisbane Elementary School, I mean, they had to tear down a number of private homes in order to get that field, so in the old days, they really wanted those fields, and they had the money to pay for them.
Right.
But then things have changed. And so then the city has taken on responsibility for them, but basically they're school fields.
Well, yeah, they become in a tough place whether to decide to educate kids or do support things. So they're making a choice to really concentrate on the classroom.
Yeah, sure. No. Well, when you have limited funds, you have to.
Right.
Appropriate. Can't think, but he can sure run fast, no.
What?
The kids that go, I mean, it's obvious, right?
Sorry,
You do just the opposite, that,
this must be the question. I got a call about this BES new bathroom that was put in the field, that we put it, that why the design is such that it's right in the middle, right in the beginning of the field. Why wasn't it placed in the back, not to be such a sore thumb? Would you please, for those who are listening, would you please explain who decided that and what did it came about? I know Recreation Commission, I mean, people are...
the city council approved it and went to, I know, but...
I was
you were
before my time.
accountable.
I mean, my understanding is that part of it was because of where the hookups were for the water and sewer. Was in order, if you were to put it someplace else, you'd be a much longer run for your water and sewer hookups, so therefore it'd be more expensive.
Right, and then there's going to be trees put in there right in front to cover it. That's what I remember. Wasn't there going to be some trees to be placed in front to cover the building from the drive-by?
I'd have to ask Randy.
I remember there was something like that, but
I don't
Okay.
recall that, but...
that's it. I just wanted to have that response to be made. Thank you.
Let's see, moving to Mission Blue Park Field. As I was saying, the softball league rentals account for 54%, and those are paying groups that pay $20 an hour to rent the field, as well as if they need lights for nighttime games, they pay also $20 an hour for lights. And so the total revenue that Mission Blue Field brought in 2011 was $4,600 approximately. And it gets pretty good usage with youth baseball, as we'll see, as well as, flag football is only 5 hours, so it doesn't really account for a 1 whole percent. It's like 0.5%. And AYSO and CYSA also have some activity there at Mission Blue Field. But the bulk of youth baseball takes place here, as most of the games are played here, and there is an 8.1% cost recovery. and 13.8% for flag football. Adult softball has a 10.7% cost recovered rate.
I have a question. Is the adult softball a Brisbane program?
It is.
Didn't we have a adult softball that was Academy of Art or something that was using the field?
Yes, they also use it. So they're part of the ones who pay $20 an hour. They used it for 394 hours, Academy of Art University softball.
And where does that show on this?
Oh, this is just for city programs that we're looking at the cost recovery for the percentages, but as far as the breakdown of the field, they're included with the softball league rentals. 480.
Because it's adult softball.
Right.
So those credits of 1.1.
That includes college.
Oh, I see what you mean. Softball league rentals. Oh, so the total of the rentals.
Do you want me to clarify?
Yes, please.
Adult softball is our park and rec program that we run. The softball league rentals are outside users like Academy of Art, University, Urban High School in San Francisco, and University High School in San Francisco. All their women's softball teams play a lot of their games up at Mission Blue, and they pay for it. So that's pretty much the primary rentals. That's those three teams. And those are outside non-park and rec programs. The adult softball is our park and rec program.
Okay,
Right,
so they're not
3%.
on this list of revenue?
No, they.
No. Well, I don't. You'd have to
Or
flip
the
next.
revenue from field rental. Are you looking at the staff report? This.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that's included. They're included in that 4,600 amount.
But their hours aren't included, and so that would change their cost ratio of hours cost per hour.
Yeah, because like all the fields, the primary user, well, for Littman and BES field, like AYSO is 80 to 88% of the usage, but since they don't pay anything or they don't provide any revenues, all the costs that are associated with it get put on park and rec programs.
Can I, another question?
Yeah,
I'm still
not getting-
confused by this.
Let's just finish.
Oh, sure,
this thing
please,
here,
please.
Sarah. So,
I mean, we can look to make sure that we've got it included correctly.
Yeah, it's included on this chart, but
Right.
3% or 24 hours. I guess there wasn't that much usage as far as
softball league rentals is
our own
80,
league.
and then our league is the 24 hours.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then and we charge $20 an hour.
Right. For the league rentals.
Okay, so 480 times the 20.
The,
Okay, so that doesn't seem right.
It's,
Those the figures are.
it's not making any sense to me.
No,
I'm
be close
sorry.
to, $10,000 in
Thank you.
for the softball league rentals.
We'll go back and look at that number.
Yeah, 480 by 20 is 5,600. It's a little bit lower.
Okay, well we got close to 480 times 20, right? Close to $10,000. So, okay.
just a quick question.
Yeah.
Do you know, you mentioned that AYSO uses 80% of the field with no reimbursement. Is that the same with all other cities too? Do you know?
No, I mean, different cities have different charges. Some of them do provide the fields for free. Others provide it for $10 an hour. It depends on what each of the individual cities.
I just wanted to find out what is the norm.
There probably isn't a real norm to it.
It's done differently. Some cities charge a flat fee. I think I was talking to Jim Skeels about it, like some Burlingame sports pay $15,000 to $20,000 for a flat fee. Some cities do it per kid, per season, like $5 a kid. If there's 500 kids in their league, I should have picked easier numbers.
All right.
Thank you. Let's do 100 kids at $5. I can do that one, 500. It's really, it varies. I mean, we did have a slide, we did a cost comparison, and it's somewhere, we did about every city between us and San Carlos.
I remember seeing.
Right, the subcommittee brought that to the city council, and then they asked the city Parks and Recreation Commission to look at charging for individuals, and what the Parks and Recreation Commission said is they did not want to charge children for use of city facilities.
Yep. Okay, thank you.
Okay. So, yeah, Caroline, so it looks like we're missing that softball league rentals.
Okay. I'll double check that.
So that would change the cost recovery a little bit.
Yeah, it brings it to 6.something%.
15,000 compared to 97,000.
Okay.
About that. So, all right, so any comments about the fields?
Fields are expensive propositions.
Yeah, fields are expensive.
But, activity, and I think it's very important that we provide places for activities. Because physical education is something that's lacking in our schools. And so it's important that the city help provide it. It'd be nice to see a way to get the costs down. But
Yeah, I know we're going to be talking about some of the fees later. Yeah, when it's just running around on your own, there shouldn't be any cost. But for programs, maybe we should be more consistent with some of the other cities. But I was looking at the time. We got 10:36.
We're going to take a break, or
do we want to extend the meeting and have her go through the Lippman, the gym, and then we can take a break?
I think that would be a good idea. That's okay for everybody else. Just
I'll make a
finish this
motion.
part here. Okay, do I have a second?
until when?
Until we're finished with this. Can we just,
yeah.
do we need to set a time, or can we just say once we finish?
I think we need to extend the meeting till.
Okay, let's just make it 11 o'clock, but we'll take the break at
Yeah, no, that's good.
Caroline is finished.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. This is just a couple more slides. So, Lippman Gym.
Before you go to that, one quick comment, if I may. I think one of the interesting things that I guess I need from the Recreation staff and also from the Recreation Commission, looking at the cost of the fields, which in total is pretty significant and is very little cost recovery, especially for the two fields that are close by schools. And so the question is, do we really need 3 fields? That's the question. You don't have to answer it tonight.
I think if you talk to the people who use the fields, they would say 4 or 5.
Yeah, well, I mean,
needed.
do we need to pay for 3 fields? I guess is really the more pertinent question from our point of view. Can we get by with 2? Let's say, I don't know. I have no idea what the answer to that question is, because it depends on what variables you use to answer it, of course. But it's a really expensive operation maintaining these fields. Hundreds of thousands of dollars.
$170,000.
Well, it's not as expensive as the pool. I mean, recreation is not an enterprise fund where we're going to recover 100%, but
Yeah, but you can't close half of the pool, but you could close one of the fields.
Yeah.
I know
Well,
Clark has
we
been
could
talking
close
about pool.
We could close the pool for half a year. I mean,
Well, you could
there's
do it that way, but
yeah.
Just kind of based on the rough numbers, and we do subsidize the fields.
Yeah.
155,000.
No, not that much, is it?
oh yeah.
$155,000. You have about 7,000 with BS and Littman, and then Mission Blues about 100,
Easily, yes.
and then we take in about 15.
Yes.
Right.
I don't know, what is it about pool that Clark?
Hmm?
You mentioned about the pool frequently, that it's...
All right,
I'm
we're ready,
just saying
Caroline. We want to.
I'm saying we're looking at some of the programs that are actually making money, and then we beat them to death, and then we've never talked about the pool, and that's the biggest drain of all. I'm just saying we need to get our priorities straight.
We do. We're getting there. We'll get there soon.
Okay, so
Go through the
most...
process.
Sorry. Most of the youth sports take place in Littman Gym, such as boys basketball, girls basketball, volleyball, and basketball camp, but it is predominantly used by CYO, and this is not the art university, but the Amateur Athletic Union, and their basketball league. So futsal is another program that is not a city-run program, but is currently using 10% of Littman Gym, and adult basketball is a drop-in basketball that is 18%. Okay, so as far as cost recoveries, basketball takes in about $1,600, and the cost recovery is 37.1%. And basketball camp makes money at 125% cost recovered. And the youth sports, basketball, it has the most cost recovered at 60.4%. Girls basketball and volleyball at 45.5% down there. And I think that all covers it, actually. That's the last of the slides.
The futsal and the CYO and AAU basketball,
Yes.
in the revenue from gym.
No, they do not pay any fees to be inside the gym.
So we're not charging them anything.
No, not currently.
Okay.
I have a question.
All right. Yeah. Sorry.
I guess maybe to Russ or one of you folks. On the boys' basketball, it seems like there's a significant cost recovery compared to the girls' basketball.
I can, because I coached one of the teams, so then the cost included my hourly rate for that one team, so it just kind of blew it out of proportion as to, it really depends. If we get a volunteer for one team and I have to pay for another team, so it's not really comparing apples and oranges.
Well,
I could have had, so there's 6 teams in the middle school, 3 boys, 3 girls. If I have 3 volunteers for the boys team and I end up having to use staff for girls teams, it looks like one costs a lot more than the other.
Well, the difference to me, it seems the credits, the signups.
Oh, I can't see anymore with the lights on.
Oh. I mean, the credits are about a 5 or 6 to 1 ratio. So, I mean, that's related to, I guess, participation. The girls, $560 compared to the boys at $27.53.
I'm trying to think. So 2011, I'm sure we had, for 1 year, we had twice as many boys for one grade. It was a weird cohort. There was like almost 30 7th grade boys that signed up, and I think there was like 6 7th grade girls 1 year. So it was kind of wacky for 1 year.
Do they reuse the uniforms, or do the kids keep the uniforms?
They pay for the uniform. In basketball, they pay $25. They get a jersey they keep.
Okay, so there's like some additional cost because the boys and the girls were the same amount for uniforms. So, but I guess they're paying for the uniforms, and so this is just like maybe some extra.
Yeah, it's almost a complete. I just basically whatever it costs.
Might be like a setup charge, and you just split it between the.
Yeah, I just split it between boys. I mean, I don't know why. It's kind of weird that we even separate boys and girls basketball. It's just kind of a accounting thing we inherited. So it's But it's really all one program. It's just basketball.
Okay. You know, I wanted to ask you about the CYO and the AAU basketball and the futsal. I mean, like CYO, they seem to have money, and we're giving them our facility for free.
I think it's just a continuation of kind of like the AYSO. It's a lot of the same coaches and things, and we just kind of grandfathered them in with the same deal that they get free usage of the facilities.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder if there, you know, a Catholic school would, you know, even offer free rental of their gym for their basketball program. You know, we're doing that. It's kind of like that church thing, huh? So
I have a question. We've got the CYO and the futsal hours listed in the total hours used, but yet we don't add them into the chart to get an actual cost so we can figure out the cost recovery. So again, this system is flawed because we're not including those other two groups.
you're right. That percentage should be lower.
600 some hours of usage. And so that changes all the percentages on the usage and the fees by a tremendous percentage.
Yes, it would.
Heck yeah, man. It's a huge amount.
It's a huge amount. So it just doesn't, I mean, it shows on your pie chart, but it doesn't show in the numbers. And so I think it makes it into sort of a flawed.
Well, it gives the picture that we are subsidizing these groups quite a bit with our own programs, because only our programs are accounted for in the cost recoveries. But if we wanted to add in futsal and CYO and AU, we could have that cost of, well, we don't have a cost of
Right, because we don't have a cost for the building.
Right.
There's no
Why?
cost.
Belongs to the school.
Right, the building, the gym belongs to the school. We don't pay for the gym, so there is no cost per se for them to be there.
And we don't have any staff that's participating in those programs. So.
Well, we do use staff.
Well, we open and close.
Yeah, we open and close the gym.
There would be building attendant time.
But we do pay
And a building
$7,000.
What?
We do pay the $37,000.
Right, we pay the school district, but then we pay the school district for the use of all its facilities.
Okay, I thought the $37,000 was for the.
But where?
No, I mean, it's
But
for a
where is
number of
the
different
attendant costs for the CYO and futsal?
Right, we could add that. We could show that. You are correct there.
Because if that's 700 hours at, let's say, $20 an hour actual cost, we're losing a lot of our budget accountability right there. And where are those people being charged?
Yeah. Yeah, it seems like if it's in here, there's costs.
We will add that when we bring it back to the Parks and Recreation Commission.
Very good observation. Thank you.
All right.
Okay.
Take a break.
All right.
Mayor? I mean, it doesn't appear you're going to finish tonight.
Maybe we should just cut it. Yeah, you're right.
You want to have a quick conversation about continuance of the meeting to another night, and then maybe a discussion about what it is you want to try to do tonight, and what you want to postpone to another night?
Yeah, thanks, Clay. You know, we have talked about coming back on Wednesday. I'd like to get some feedback from the council members in regards to these other items that are on the agenda. Should we bring them back to, should we forward them to the Wednesday night potential meeting?
You mean this coming Wednesday?
Yes, because we have the budget that we need to adopt on the 18th.
We don't have to.
No, we don't have to.
Well, the only...
we have to adopt it before July 1st, right? But,
right. I mean, part of the schedule was that Councilmember Miller was going to be here this week and not available next week. So it's really kind of a matter of how you want to accommodate that or deal with that.
Yeah, okay, well, you know what, Ray, you're the one that's going to be on vacation. When are you leaving, when are you coming back?
Well, I don't think that's the pertinent thing is,
Well, it's really to
I
participate.
mean, I'm here this week, but not then for
The
a
rest
number
the
of
month.
weeks, so, yeah.
Okay, so your
Basically, it's
participation-
really, if you want something from me on the budget before the end of the fiscal year, it has to be this week. Otherwise, you go ahead, without me, which I can live with.
Okay.
So it's up to you all, really. How pressured do you want to put your time schedule, or do you want to spread it out? And
Didn't we have scheduled the 21st, June 21st?
You know, it's, from what Ray's saying, is that he's available this week. If we want to try and get participation from Ray on the budget, it's got to be done this week. If the council feels, yeah, that'd be great, but I'd rather not be pressurized or pressured into having it be done this week, then we can spread it out through the rest of the month.
And either is fine with me.
Well, I think it's important at least to have the discussion with Ray here on budget priorities. I do have a CCAG meeting on Thursday. I prefer to do it tomorrow.
There's an Open Space and
Tomorrow,
Ecology
on
Committee
Tuesday?
meeting in this room tomorrow night.
What's that?
There's an Open Space and Ecology Committee meeting in this room tomorrow night.
And can we even get this noticed in time for a public hearing?
Yeah, it's just a continuance. You'll continue this meeting at the end of tonight to a date, date and time certain.
I showed the 13 that we have set it up as a budget.
Pardon me?
I did, in my calendar, I showed the 13 as a budget.
It was
We penciled it in.
backup date,
Yeah, we penciled it in.
Yes. I would prefer that
I don't show
we
it.
get Ray's participation.
I'm good with doing the 13th.
Me too, I'm good with the 13.
Okay. So now let's just look at what is still left on the agenda. Do we feel that those...
I'm going to need to take a break, so
Okay, you know, let's
Excuse me.
take a break and we'll come on back and
this
just
is not
finish it up.
going to be a 5-minute thing.
Okay, no problem.
You're going to be gone for a couple of months?